Kenichi, an overworked Japanese office worker who collapses one day from drinking too many energy drinks like Red Bull. Instead of waking up in another world like in typical isekai stories, he simply survives, sues his company for overworking him, and retires to live peacefully on a farm with him, attending to his garden. Life is good as he shoots down crows with slingshots and watches anime all day. Until one day, while making lunch, he suddenly vanishes and finds himself in the middle of a dense forest. Confused, he searches the area but only finds the skeleton of a knight and some unfamiliar plants. Realizing he might be in an isekai scenario, Kenichi yells, "Status window!" And to his surprise, a blue game-like status screen appears, confirming that he's indeed in another world. Oddly, there's no HP bar, but what he does have is access to his Amazon account, allowing him to shop online. Even better, he has an item box that can store and deconstruct objects. Curious, he gathers some weeds and discovers he can break them down into individual components, giving him a crafting edge. Excited by the possibilities, he checks his online store, but he quickly realizes he still needs money to buy anything. The system offers a trade function, but after appraising himself, the computer deems him worthless. That is until he notices the knight's sword and shiny armor. Figuring the dead knight won't miss it, Kenichi strips the equipment from the corpse and trades it for some essentials, food and water. As an apology, he gives the man a burial, as he was a big help. He then gets a professional, expensive bicycle worth 20,701 yen, along with a sports towel and leather boots. Using a compass he bought to drive him towards civilization, and a monocular to see. He spends the entire day cycling, but finds nothing. As night falls, Kenichi sets up camp, making a curry and drink. But he soon discovers the dangers of the wild when a pack of wolves surrounds him. Panicking, he opens his store to buy the biggest American gun he can find, only to learn that firearms are unavailable. Thinking quickly, he buys a batch of fireworks, hoping to scare the wolves away. The loud explosions startle them, but aren't enough to make them retreat. Desperate, he purchases a slingshot and uses it to fire small, high-impact iron balls. The force knocks out a few wolves, convincing the rest to flee. Without wasting time, he buys a headlamp, hops on his bike, and pedals through the night to escape the forest. By morning, he's exhausted but alive. He uses a ladder and a telescope from his store to scout the area. He spots a distant city and begins the long trek across the grasslands. When he finally reaches the main road, he's nearly run over by a passing carriage. The driver, a merchant named Fuyu, feels guilty and offers him a ride to Dahlia. Kenichi accepts and meets another passenger in the back seat, a traveling bard. During the ride, Fuyu notices Kenichi's strange attire and asks what he's doing in the city. Kenichi claims he's planning to start a business, which makes Fuyu think that Kenichi has an item box, with the bard showing off hers. When they arrive at the city gates, Kenichi helps Fuyu unload his cargo while the bard woman runs off. To show his gratitude, Kenichi gifts him a pouch of pepper. Fuyu is stunned but grabs him, warning Kenichi not to sell spices openly, as there's a powerful spice mafia called Bacopa that controls the spice market. Selling pepper could get him killed. Still, Fuyu offers to buy the pepper in secret, insisting on paying despite Kenichi's protests, as merchants never accept free things. To Kenichi's surprise, Fuyu pays him the equivalent of 100,000 yen for what cost Kenichi only 1,000 yen, making him realize the massive profit potential of his Amazon shop. After exploring the city, Kenichi checks into an inn run by a friendly hostess named Azalea. She helps him with the paperwork, but Kenichi quickly realizes he doesn't know the local language. Azalea assumes he's a foreign dignitary, but he clarifies that he's just an aspiring merchant. When she mentions that the Merchant Guild requires literacy and math skills, Kenichi assures her that he's good at math. To prove it, she quizzes him on a multiplication problem, which he solves instantly, impressing her. She asks for his name and writes it down for him after he pays. Kenichi then makes a deal with her, willing to give her candy from a foreign land in exchange for her teaching him the local language. She accepts and enjoys a box of expensive candy you can only get in the kingdom of Kadan. Azalea is ecstatic when she gets her hands on some. After a few hours of tutoring, Kenichi becomes fluent in the written language, leaving Azalea amazed as she's already comfortable with him. She starts viewing him as a potential husband, much to Kenichi's confusion, as he sees her as young enough to be his daughter. Before leaving, Kenichi draws a portrait of Azalea, showing it to her, which she treasures since only nobles can usually afford such luxuries. That night, he gets no sleep as they share the night on his bed. The next day, Kenichi registers with the Merchant Guild. He struggles with the registration fee, which is the equivalent of 50,000 yen, but the guild allows him to pay in installments. Once registered, he receives an ID stick to confirm his guild membership during business transactions, noticing it looks the same as Fuyu's. Eager to start making money, Kenichi goes around the market to get an idea about what to sell to stand out and provide something. He even buys fruit from a young vendor. He goes back to the inn to see Azalea greet him and encourage him, as she's happy to have a successful husband. The next morning, Kenichi sets up a market stall. Azalea is impressed by how quickly he assembles it, thinking he has great carpentry skills, and she's especially fascinated by the modern-looking clothespins he uses. Unlike the flimsy ones made of wood and rubber in this world, Kenichi's are sturdy and practical. He quickly realizes that these simple clothespins are a gold mine, as they sell out fast. As the day progresses, he sets up shop by an old woman in the shade, who quickly sees his potential as he has an item box. Much to his surprise, she becomes his first customer, as there's value in his goods, and merchants tend to be friendly with their neighbors. The day continues with people selling shows to children. Kenichi attracts more customers, which also helps the old woman's sales as well, as she's making money from proximity, making her thankful. Among the customers is a nobleman impressed by the quality of Kenichi's knives. Kenichi, recognizing the man's high status from his attire, knows he could make a significant sale. The noble likes the knife but needs something bigger, so Kenichi fetches a katana. The man tests out the weapon and loves it, asking its price, which is 1 gold, rather expensive, but in the end, he buys it. While Kenichi is making the sale, a beast woman suddenly gets extremely close, sniffing him before licking him, even after he pulls away. She's smacked on the head by her kin, her name being Miley. Kenichi is frightened by them, as this is his first encounter with beast folk, but he learns they're common and rather eccentric, showing interest in the cloth covering his stall. Though it wasn't meant for sale, Kenichi offers them a deal. Since they don't have the 8 copper he's selling the cloth for, the beast folk, unfamiliar with math, think he's trying to scam them. The nobleman, still present, reassures them of Kenichi's honesty, allowing the deal to go through. By the end of the day, Kenichi makes a substantial profit, allowing him to buy 5 more nights at Azalea's inn. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, a noblewoman named Lady Primula sees the clothespins and realizes their business potential. She decides to introduce them to her company, believing they could make a fortune, as she was taught not to waste an opportunity. That evening, Kenichi, tired but satisfied, takes a cold bath by the well, but it isn't cutting it, as he's been spoiled by modern life, so he decides to create one himself. Browsing his store, he buys a barrel, fills it with water, and heats it over a fire, finally enjoying a warm soak, bringing out his inner Goku. As he relaxes, he starts to wonder how his online store actually works. With packages appearing out of nowhere, he worries there might be a hidden cost, like losing his soul. Still, he decides to leave that problem for another day. Elsewhere, deep in the forest, a young girl named Anemone is desperately having to catch her own food and hunt, hoping to one day eat her fill. The following morning, Kenichi decides to freshen up his stall's inventory by adding some decorative jewelry. Though they're not diamond or quartz, nothing more than polished glass, they sparkle enough to turn heads and could bring in a tidy profit. The old woman sees this and asks about his supplier, but he says that's too big of a secret. The two are interrupted as Margaret, the maid from the previous day, arrives, eager to buy more clothespins. When she requests a whopping 100 of them, Kenichi is stunned, but happily makes the sale since she has the money ready, totaling 20 copper or 4 silver. While packing her order, Margaret's eyes catch the gleam of Kenichi's jewelry. She asks if the shimmering gems are real diamonds, but Kenichi clarifies that they're just glass. Still, she finds them beautiful and asks him to hold one for her until she can return with enough money to buy it. Kenichi is fine with this, and she leaves. Business continues steadily for the rest of the day. Just as Kenichi is about to pack up, the beast folk from the previous evening show up again. Their serious expressions make him worry they might be there to rough him up. However, Miley, the cat woman, leans in close and sniffs him, confirming to her companions that she smells spices on him. The group becomes excited and begs Kenichi to sell them some. Kenichi hesitates. The rumors about the spice syndicate still linger in his mind, making him reluctant to take the risk. Luckily, the old woman walks into to try and calm them down, as the new guy doesn't need to involve himself into any trouble with the Bacopa family. This gathers a crowd, with the old woman able to name off all the troublesome figures of the family. The nearby townsfolk also warn the beast folk not to pressure Kenichi, explaining that a newcomer like him can't afford to make such dangerous deals, with him having his own life and troubles to worry about. Although Kenichi refuses to sell them spices, he comes up with a loophole. Technically, he's not breaking any rules if he simply shares a meal with them. So he invites the group to join him for dinner, out in the forest, away from prying eyes. The beast folk eagerly agree and carry him out the city. That night, Kenichi meets them, along with the old woman Anama, on the outskirts of town. While he preps the meal, Anama offers to help by cutting the vegetables. When she sees the produce, she's shocked by color, not knowing if it's safe to eat. Kenichi casually explains that he imported them from a faraway land, confidently assuring her they'll taste incredible. With all the ingredients ready, Kenichi seasons the fish with his precious spices and simmers everything into a hearty stew, using curry powder, chicken stock, and oyster sauce. The meal is a massive hit. The beast folk are floored by the rich flavors, unlike anything they've ever tasted, with Granny feeling like royalty as only nobility uses silver spoon while commoners use wood. After their meal, the beast folk start craving alcohol, but Anama warns them as they already had a free meal, but Kenichi shows them he got it like that, shrugs it off, and pulls out a bottle of cheap liquor. He pours them a few drinks, but makes them swear to keep their lips sealed about the meal. Anama scolds him for being too trusting, but Kenichi believes the beast folk are good people and doesn't see the harm. As the night goes on, the group drinks together, then takes off their shirts to swim in the river and bathe, and eventually dozes off under the stars. Miley, in particular, seems to be growing quite fond of Kenichi. The next morning, Kenichi returns to the inn, getting a good view of his hostess, only for her to interrogate him like she's his wife, asking him about what he did the previous night. As she's mad, he went out to fool around with a beast woman when he has her instead. He makes the mistake of trying to lie about what he did, but she dusted the evidence off him, giving him the cold shoulder. But our boy has no time for that, as his slow life doesn't need any woman. Margaret shows up again, this time with a beautiful woman who screams nobility. Kenichi is momentarily captivated by the elegant stranger and her notable chest. He then stops himself and greets Margaret as he has a business relationship with her. Kenichi presents the piece, and Margaret quickly pays for it, handing it over to Primula. The merchant's daughter is able to easily recognize that it's glass. She admires the craftsmanship, convinced it must be made of genuine diamonds. Impressed, she asks if Kenichi has more. Without missing a beat, he opens his store interface and purchases a new batch of jewelry, displaying them for her. Primula is amazed, not just by the quality of the jewelry, but also by Kenichi's item box, which allows him to store and retrieve items instantly. She suddenly introduces herself. Primula, the daughter of a wealthy merchant, Mallow Trading Company, makes him a proposition. She wants Kenichi to accompany her to meet her father, the head of the Mallow Trading Company. Kenichi is wary of getting involved with influential figures. However, Anama reassures him that Primula's father is well known in town for being a fair and reputable man. With that in mind, Kenichi accepts the invitation. Primula offers him a ride in her carriage, and during the journey she shows him wooden prototypes of the clothespins he had been selling. Though the wood frame was easy to replicate, the metal clamp was too complex for her artisans to recreate. Kenichi realizes the intricate design of the spring mechanism is beyond the local craftsmanship, giving him a business edge. Upon arriving at the Mallow estate, Kenichi is taken aback by the mansion's grandeur. However, Primula brushes it off, claiming it's small compared to the homes of the local nobility. Inside, she introduces Kenichi to her father, Mallow, a shrewd but good-natured old merchant. After exchanging pleasantries, Mallow gets down to business. He expresses interest in forming a partnership with Kenichi, proposing that he become the official supplier for the Mallow Trading Company. Kenichi expected this pitch, figuring Mallow plans to leverage the deal for maximum profit. Curious, Kenichi asks why Mallow didn't simply buy cheap goods from his stall and resell them at a markup without ever consulting him. Mallow explains that while he could have done so, that sort of underhanded business tactic would only create distrust. By negotiating directly, he gains an advantage over competitors who will inevitably approach Kenichi as well. Mallow offers Kenichi a fair deal, 50% of the retail price for his products. Although Kenichi could probably push for a better margin, he's already making an absurd profit through his store, so he gladly accepts. The two men shake hands, sealing the deal. With the partnership secured, Kenichi's first batch of goods earns him a staggering sum, over 1 million yen worth of local currency. However, Primula, having fallen in love with the jewelry, insists on buying a few pieces for herself. She pays him a generous 10 gold coins, roughly 2 million yen, making Kenichi wealthier than he ever expected. Now flush with cash, Kenichi decides it's finally time to pursue his dream of a peaceful life. Using his store, he buys a ready-made house and sets off into the forest to find a suitable location. He informs Azalea of his plans before leaving, though she finds him odd that he'd willingly live in the wilderness rather than the safety of the city. Once he locates a clearing, Kenichi buys a weed whacker from his store and starts clearing the land. However, he quickly discovers that the gas prices are closer to that in California, too steep, even in this world. He begrudgingly accepts the cost and continues working until he creates a path through the forest. Next, he needs to remove the trees. He buys a gas-powered chainsaw and spends hours cutting them down. However, when he tries to store the massive trunks in his item box, he realizes they're too big. Frustrated, he cuts them into 10-meter logs, making them small enough to fit, with this taking all day. With him doing the rest tomorrow, the only task remaining is pulling out the stubborn tree stumps. However, digging them out proves to be backbreaking work. Rather than ruin his spine, Kenichi buys a backhoe from his store. Though he initially regrets spending over 1 million yen on heavy machinery, he soon realizes it was worth it, saving him hours of labor, only to realize it runs on diesel fuel, which his store doesn't sell. Panicking, he considers mixing his own fuel using kerosene and additives, but hesitates, fearing he might destroy the engine. To be safe, he tests the mixture on a diesel generator first. It works perfectly, giving him the confidence to use it on the backhoe the next day. Before heading back to the forest, Kenichi visits a local magic shop, hoping to buy some bug-repelling stones. The shopkeeper, a wizard, is intrigued by Kenichi's foreign appearance. After some haggling, Kenichi offers him 2 oranges in exchange for a discount, fruit the wizard has never seen before, making it a rare and exotic trade. On the way, he talks about the wanted poster with the old woman and learns the names to these faces, with them being bandits who steal around this area. A while back, the little girl from earlier was sold away to a man and dropped in the carriage that was filled with young girls and women. But soon on the road, the carriage was attacked, this being the bandit on the wanted poster. Back in the forest, with the backhoe running and bug stones in hand, Kenichi is ready to continue building his perfect forest retreat by building his log cabin, even though he needs more money. Mallow samples the sugar and is blown away by its purity and taste. However, despite his interest, he's unable to buy it. The local government heavily regulates the trade of sugar and salt, making it illegal to purchase them from unlicensed sellers. Fortunately, there's still some good news. The jewelry Kenichi sold earlier is practically flying off the shelves, bringing Mallow a fortune. Eager to keep the momentum going, Mallow quickly offers to buy another batch. This new shipment of gems nets Kenichi a whopping 15 gold coins, equivalent to around 3 million yen. With that kind of profit, he finally has enough to purchase the rustic log cabin he's had his eye on in his Amazon-like inventory shop. He still can't get over the absurdity of being able to buy an entire house online, and for the shockingly low price of 1.7 million yen. It feels too good to be true, but he can't resist the deal. Once the purchase is complete, Kenichi eagerly waits for his cabin to appear, expecting a fully built home to pop into existence. Instead, he's greeted by a mountain of wooden beams, panels, and a daunting instruction booklet written in what might as well be alien runes. As it turns out, he accidentally bought a do-it-yourself assembly kit. Grumbling under his breath, Kenichi reluctantly begins piecing it together during his time off. Luckily, he catches a break. While he's struggling with the construction, the beast folk he previously shared a meal with pass by. Still grateful for his generosity, they eagerly offer to help. With their combined strength and skills, the project progresses far more smoothly than Kenichi anticipated. Over the next few weeks, they work tirelessly, all while Kenichi continues running his market stall during the day. Thanks to their assistance, the cabin is completed in less than a month. As a token of appreciation, Kenichi throws a feast, grilling up a variety of mouth-watering dishes for the beast folk. Though the cabin is standing, it still needs a lot of finishing touches. Over the following weeks, Kenichi spends his free time installing the essentials, painting the walls, building a bathroom, and setting up solar panels to generate electricity. Finally, with his dream home complete, Kenichi celebrates by treating himself to a well-earned hot bath. Unfortunately, he still hasn't installed proper plumbing, forcing him to make several grueling bike trips to haul enough water for the tub. This is exactly the kind of peaceful, slow life he always dreamed of. The following morning, Kenichi returns to the inn to break the news to Azalea. He's officially moving out. She's caught off guard, having never imagined he was serious about building a cabin in the woods. Though she puts on a supportive smile, it's clear she's disheartened by the thought of seeing him less often. The next morning, Kenichi wakes up feeling refreshed and decides to take his bike out for a ride. He leisurely pedals through the forest, snapping pictures of the vibrant wildflowers. However, his peaceful outing is abruptly cut short when an arrow zips past and fires at the surrounding foliage, sending stones whizzing past the attackers. Though it doesn't hit them, the sudden assault startles the beast folk. But it's what Kenichi does next that truly terrifies them. In a fit of desperation, he yanks out his excavator from storage. The ground-shaking appearance of the massive machine sends the beast folk into a panic. Not interested in finding out what the mechanical beast can do, they retreat into the woods. Just as he starts to calm down, he hears a faint whimper. Following the sound, he discovers a wounded bobcat lying at the base of a tree. Its leg is pierced by an arrow, and it's clearly on the brink of death. The bobcat growls weakly when he approaches, warning him off. To protect himself from its claws, Kenichi quickly buys a cheap set of padded armor. With the bobcat too weak to put up much of a fight, Kenichi carefully removes the arrow. He cleans the wound with alcohol, applies antibiotic cream, and gives the animal a mild painkiller. Though he does his best, Kenichi knows the bobcat won't survive in the wild in this condition. Without much choice, he decides to bring it back to his cabin. Once home, he sets up a blanket for the feline to rest on. However, the bobcat barely moves, leaving him worried that it might not make it through the night. He first visits the local wizard, who quickly identifies the animal as a bobcat. However, instead of offering help, the wizard coldly suggests Kenichi should just kill it and sell its pelt for a hefty profit. Hoping for more compassion, he seeks out Anama, only to receive the same heartless advice. Just as Kenichi begins to lose hope, Miley suddenly shows up and tackles him in a playful pounce, sniffing him curiously. Her eyes widen when she detects the bobcat's scent. Ecstatic, she explains that her people view bobcats as sacred messengers. Upon seeing the injured bobcat, Miley immediately recognizes the arrow wounds as the work of a rival beast folk tribe. Meanwhile, the bobcat's condition begins to improve, though it constantly tries to lick its wound. To prevent it from worsening the injury, Kenichi slips a makeshift cone around its neck. Impressed by Kenichi's compassion and basic medical skills, Miley asks if he's a doctor. He modestly denies it, claiming he only knows a bit of first aid. Grateful for his kindness, Miley goes hunting and returns with freshly caught bird meat as a gift. That evening, Kenichi grills the meat and the two enjoy a hearty dinner. After the meal, a drowsy Miley asks if she can stay the night. When Kenichi questions whether she should be neglecting her duties, she insists that the bobcat's safety is more important. With only one bed in the cabin, she teasingly suggests they share it. Though tempted, Kenichi manages to keep his composure and stays surprisingly chaste. A few days later, with the bobcat fully healed, Kenichi releases it back into the wild. With the cabin project complete, he turns his attention towards starting a farm. He purchases tools and seedlings, but quickly realizes he has a major problem: water. Hauling it back and forth from the river is exhausting and inefficient. To solve the issue, Kenichi spends several days installing an electric water pump, providing himself with a steady supply of fresh water. However, before he can get in, Primula unexpectedly shows up. Concerned that he hadn't opened his stall, she came to check on him. Having heard about the cabin from Miley, she decided to visit. She's thoroughly impressed by the setup and marvels at the enormous excavator parked nearby. Not wanting to explain its modern origins, Kenichi lies and claims it's his magical summon. To his surprise, Primula believes him and even promises to keep his magic a secret. Realizing that the city gates have closed for the night, Primula asks if she can stay over. Kenichi protests, pointing out that he only has one bed, but she insists, her cheeks slightly flushed. When she spots the outdoor bath, her eyes light up and she eagerly asks to try it. As the sun sets, Kenichi heats the water and prepares the bath. Though Primula enjoys the warmth, the eerie forest surroundings make her nervous. She asks Kenichi to sit nearby for company. When she steps out, he hands her a bathrobe, which she immediately adores. She begs him to sell her a few, and despite his reluctance, he eventually agrees. Later, Kenichi surprises Primula with a portrait he painted of her. The heartfelt gesture completely wins her over. That night, he sets up 2 beds, much to her disappointment, as she was clearly hoping for something more intimate. Meanwhile, in a distant outlaw camp, a man named Shaga lounges with several women. As they drink and celebrate, he smugly discusses a recent shady job he was paid in gold coins for, a task that seems linked to a powerful figure pulling strings behind the scenes. The next day, Kenichi takes Primula back to town. Mallow, seeing them together, assumes they spent the night together. Instead of being mad, he seems completely unfazed, as if it's a common occurrence. During their meeting, Kenichi pitches the idea of selling more spicy products, like lingerie, but Mallow shoots the idea down, calling it too scandalous, much to Primula's dismay. Just then, Margaret arrives with ledgers, and Mallow reveals the Empire's new double-entry bookkeeping system, shocking Kenichi, as it's a method he knew from Japan. Realizing there might be another transmigrator in the world, Kenichi suddenly feels a twinge of unease. Over the next month, Kenichi enjoys a peaceful routine, manning his stall as usual. One afternoon, he suddenly remembers that Primula's caravan could be returning its supply run its supply soon. Looking forward to seeing her, he plans to visit later. However, before he can leave, a loud commotion erupts in the town square. Curious, he abandons his stall and heads over to investigate. Before he can reach the square, Margaret, Primula's maid, rushes over to him, gasping for breath. She frantically pleads for his help. Nearby, Mallow is on his knees in the street, desperately begging anyone to rescue his daughter. His voice cracks as he offers to pay any amount necessary. Onlookers whisper among themselves, the grim truth spreading. Primula's caravan was ambushed by bandits. Everyone aboard, including Primula, was abducted. Despite Mallow's desperate pleas, no one steps forward. The reason soon becomes clear. The man responsible for the attack is Shaga, a ruthless outlaw with a notorious reputation. With 50 loyal men and a fortress of his own, he's untouchable. The local guild and knights claim it will take several days to organize a proper rescue mission, but the townspeople know better. No one wants to risk their lives against Shaga. Meanwhile, at the bandit hideout, Primula is thrown into a rusted iron cage. She demands to know what they intend to do with her, but Shaga merely smirks. Since she's the daughter of a wealthy merchant, she'll fetch a hefty price on the black market. It's the only reason she's still unharmed. He makes it clear that if not for her value, he would have already had his way with her. With a lecherous grin, he warns his men to keep their hands off her, for now. Back in town, Mallow spots Kenichi and grabs his legs, sobbing uncontrollably, begging him to save Primula. Kenichi looks down at the man. They then pictures Primula, the woman he spent so much time with. Despite knowing it's a reckless decision, he can't stand by. After all, he has the power of Amazon on his side. However, his confidence is short-lived when he realizes he doesn't have enough funds to carry out a proper rescue. Without hesitation, Mallow hands him a heavy pouch filled with gold coins, equivalent to 10 million yen, everything he owns. Mallow informs him that Shaga's base is located in the ruins, 50 kilometers west of Dahlia. It's a long distance and Kenichi will need transportation. He browses through the vehicles in his store and ultimately buys a truck. To keep up appearances, he theatrically warns everyone to stand back, claiming he's about to summon a mighty steed. With an exaggerated chant and grand hand gestures, he fakes a magic ritual. When the CGI truck materializes, the crowd is in awe. Kenichi climbs on top of the vehicle and calls out to the crowd, asking for volunteers to fight with him. He reminds them that Shaga has a massive bounty on his head, a reward big enough to make them rich. However, as tempting as the reward is, no one dares step forward. The risk of facing Shaga outweighs the promise of wealth. Just when Kenichi fears he'll have to go it alone, the bobcat he rescued a month earlier appears by his side. Moments later, Miley and several beast folk arrive. Still grateful for Kenichi's previous help, they eagerly offer to join him. Relieved, Kenichi gears them up for battle. He buys a compound bow for Miley while her brothers receive axes and swords. Suddenly, another voice calls out, volunteering to join. To Kenichi's surprise, it's North Pole, the experienced knight. Kenichi is reassured by his presence, but can't help but wonder why the man was wandering around in his full suit of armor. North Pole explains that he recently had a sword forged from the steel Kenichi gave him and has been itching to test it out. Slaying bandits sounds like the perfect opportunity. To Kenichi's amazement, yet another person offers their help, the old magic shop owner. Kenichi tries to turn him away, worried about the man's age. However, the shopkeeper reveals that he was once a powerful battle mage. Though his body has aged, his fire magic is still as lethal as ever. Impressed, Kenichi welcomes him aboard. Lastly, Anama insists on coming along. Despite having no combat skills, she argues that she can provide moral support and cook for the group. She promises to run away the moment a fight breaks out. Though reluctant, Kenichi agrees. However, when Malo offers to come too, Kenichi firmly refuses, insisting he stay behind and wait for his daughter's safe return. With no other volunteers stepping up, Kenichi realizes it's just the 9 of them against Shaga's entire force. Before departing, he heads to the Adventurers Guild to formally register himself as an adventurer and file a bounty notice for Shaga. With their team assembled, they load into Kenichi's truck and head toward the ruins. As they leave the city, townsfolk mock them, assuming Kenichi is running off with Malo's money. Meanwhile, in Shaga's fortress, Primula is visited by a young slave girl who brings her food. Noticing how frail the girl is, Primula offers her bread instead, earning the child's gratitude. As the girl hungrily devours the food, Primula gently asks if she wants to escape. Though the child longs for freedom, she believes it's impossible. However, Primula reassures her, convinced that someone will come for them. After driving through the forest, Kenichi and his team stop to rest. Once they've eaten, he gathers everyone for a strategy meeting. With input from the group, they finalize a simple but effective plan. Miley volunteers to scout ahead using a radio. Kenichi gives her, though he calls it a magic device to keep things simple. She slips into the shadows, keeping the group informed of the bandits' movements. Late into the night, Miley reports that most of the bandits are drunk from partying. With their guard down, it's the perfect time to strike. Just before they head out, one of the beast folk offers Kenichi a Perk 30 pill, claiming it will ease his nerves. Without fully understanding what it is, Kenichi takes it. Within moments, he's completely geeked out, his perception distorted, but somehow still laser-focused on the mission. Gripping the wheel with manic determination, Kenichi barrels through the forest like a lunatic. The bandits spot the approaching truck, but before they can react, Miley takes them out with flawless sniper shots. Straight-up Call of Duty headshots. At the castle gates, the old mage climbs onto the truck's hood and unleashes a barrage of fiery spells, lighting up the night like a scene from Dragon Ball Z. The camp is thrown into chaos. Though the bandits scramble to fight back, they're sluggish and poorly armored due to their drunkenness. North Pole and the beast folk carve through them effortlessly. One bandit tries to sneak up behind Kenichi, but the bobcat pounces on him, tearing him apart. As the bandits realize they're outnumbered and outmatched, they drop their weapons and beg for mercy. However, Kenichi shows no sympathy. These are the villains, and they'll face justice. Inside the fortress, Shaga holds Primula at knife point, believing he still holds the advantage. However, Kenichi has no intention of backing down. He discreetly buys a laser pointer and signals Miley. When Kenichi blinds Shaga with the laser, Miley immediately fires a shot into his shoulder. Kenichi rushes up the stairs to grab, but Shaga recovers and moves to attack. Just as he lunges, the young slave girl uses magic to blast him down the stairs, leaving him perfectly exposed. Without hesitation, Miley puts an arrow through his skull. The battle is won, and Primula is finally safe. Overwhelmed with relief, she throws herself into Kenichi's arms. As they embrace, Kenichi, still reeling from the perk, can't help but feel a certain stiffness, but he blames the drug. Once the prisoners are freed, Kenichi provides them with clothes and supplies. Primula lovingly washes the slave girl's hair, and when Kenichi offers her a pair of scissors, she jokingly asks if he can sell her more. Already seeing a business opportunity, the other women playfully tease her, making her blush. Later, North Pole discovers a letter in Shaga's quarters revealing that corrupt nobles had been trafficking young girls into servitude. He vows to ensure they face justice. That night, the group rests, weary but victorious. In the morning, Kenichi drives everyone back to town, with Primula by his side. The streets are cleared, and people are waiting for their return, some still skeptical that Kenichi managed to defeat Shaga. Primula hops out of the truck and runs into her father's arms, happy to see him again. They share a heartfelt moment that warms the entire town. After their embrace, quickly shifts his focus to business, noticing the high-quality blouse Primula is wearing. She proudly reveals that Kenichi gave it to her, and they both seem to have the same idea. Speaking of Kenichi, Malo still hasn't properly thanked him, so he approaches Kenichi and expresses his deep gratitude for helping recover Primula. Mallow also asks if Kenichi managed to reclaim all the stolen goods from Shaga and his crew. Kenichi confirms that he stored everything in his item box, though it's not what Mallow expects. Instead of treasure, Kenichi's item box holds a collection of severed heads. The beast folk had instructed him to collect the heads of Shaga and his crew, as they're notorious and have a massive bounty. To claim the bounty, Kenichi must present Shaga's head as proof of his death. The heads will soon start to stink, so it's better if Kenichi keeps them stored safely in his item box. While collecting the heads, Kenichi also gathers all the stolen items, including a bag of 100 gold coins, rugs, liquor, pottery, gems, and other valuables. He also rescued all the women imprisoned by Shaga, but isn't sure what to do with them. Before heading back to Dahlia, Kenichi asks the women if they want to return to their villages. Some wish to go home, but others can't, as Shaga destroyed their homes and killed their families. Understanding their situation, Kenichi invites all of them to come back to Dahlia, where they have a better chance of rebuilding their lives. Primula, eager to help, offers to find them jobs, as she's the heir to the Mallow company, which gives the women hope for their future. Kenichi then asks Anemone if she knows her hometown. She tells him her village, Urup, is 800 kilometers away, which would make the journey difficult. Kenichi offers to take her there if she wishes, but Anemone, who was sold into slavery by her own people, has no intention of going back. Instead, she eagerly agrees to come with him to Dahlia. Kenichi spends the rest of the day driving the women to their respective destinations, giving them gold to help them start over. The women talk among themselves, hoping to find a man like Kenichi to settle down with. However, the old woman advises them against it, warning that Kenichi might abandon them if he finds someone he likes. Once that's done, Kenichi and the others head to the guild to claim the bounty for the heads. The receptionist is horrified when she sees the severed head, and a man comes out to ask if there are more. Kenichi pulls out 50 more heads, and the guild staff is swamped with work as they need to inspect each one. While they're busy, Kenichi takes a break, and the wizard warns him that if nobles ever find out about his unusual summoning magic and large item box, his life could become troublesome. Kenichi is determined to keep a low profile. Later, Norspo informs Kenichi that he'll be meeting with Lord Asclepius to report on the corrupt nobles backing Shaga's operations. That evening, the guild finishes tallying the reward, which totals 861 gold coins. Kenichi intends to split the reward evenly, but Anama refuses her share, feeling she didn't contribute to the mission. However, she asks Kenichi for a favor. She wants to take care of Anemone, who reminds her of her late daughter. Kenichi agrees, trusting Anama to care for her. He leaves the decision to her and heads to town. At Azalea's inn, Kenichi receives a warm welcome, and she asks him about the rumor of him taking down a bandit group. Kenichi denies it, not wanting to draw attention to himself. She also reminds him of a promise he supposedly made to make her his lover once his business succeeds. Kenichi denies making any such promise, but asks if she has any rooms available. Azalea offers him his usual room, but seems upset, wondering if she was just a one-night stand. Exhausted, Kenichi heads to his room to sleep. But later on in the night, a certain someone sneaks into his room and he can feel her under the covers. He already knows what Azalea wants, but he says he's way too tired for that much activity right now. Even so, Azalea persists and she doesn't get to see Kenichi often, so she gets on top of him and they're about to begin. But she stops, looking over the two notices Sakiled watching them. That pretty much killed the move. So in the end, Azalea went back to her room and Anemone ended up spending the night in Kenichi's room. Kenichi figured that Anama would be really worried about Anemone, so he went to her shop to see if she was there, but he couldn't find her, so he decided to just finish up the rest of his errands for the day. Hess still has a lot of loot from Shaga's camp, so first heads to the weapons store to sell the swords and shields she got. He then sold the rest of the valuables to Mallow's company for 35 gold and took the furniture to the old man's shop for 22 gold. Since the loot is going to be shared evenly, they all end up getting 12 gold from it. Kenichi feels it's finally time to return home. Upon arrival, Anemone is impressed by the house, but to her surprise, she finds Anama waiting inside. Anama had been worried about her, but figured Kenichi would eventually bring her home. Anemone decides she wants to live with Kenichi instead of Anama, and although Anama tries to convince her otherwise, she respects Anemone's decision and tells her she's welcome to visit anytime. Kenichi and Anemone head home, and Kenichi asks why she chose to live with him. Anemone admits that it's because he fed her really good food, and she likes him more for it. Later that night, Kenichi falls asleep, but he is unaware that several cloaked figures are watching his house. Life goes on as usual, but 2 weeks later, Norspo is granted the title of Baron and some land for his role in taking down Shaga. Rumor has it that he's looking for a wife. Meanwhile, Kenichi's bicycle invention has become a hit, and Mallow and Primula apologize to him for doubting the idea. They offer him 5 gold coins for the design, and bicycles become popular across the country. Kenichi is glad to see his idea succeed, but still feels like someone is watching him. Kenichi heads to the guild to collect his final reward payout and distributes the gold among everyone, including a small amount for Anama, despite her objections. As he leaves, he feels watched again, and this time he spots the person following him. Realizing he's being followed, he grabs Anemone's hand and tries to escape into an alley, but they're blocked by a carriage. The cloaked men catch up and threaten him, but Kenichi distracts them with firecrackers and uses the opportunity to escape. With a crossbow in hand, he forces the men to flee. Mallow arrives in his carriage, offering to give Kenichi and Anemone a ride. Kenichi explains what happened and suggests they meet with Lord Asclepius for protection. However, he fears that meeting with Asclepius could lead to taxes, so he decides it's better to leave the city instead. Upon returning, Mallow tells Primula about Kenichi's decision to leave town. She's upset, feeling that she hasn't properly thanked him yet. The bicycle's success has made her family a noble house, and they owe him a great debt. Primula thought Kenichi was just a boring merchant, but came to appreciate his knowledge and the deals they made. When she was kidnapped, Kenichi risked his life to save her, so she believes he must care about her deeply. She's convinced that he'll come back to see her, but Kenichi leaves without a word. Meanwhile, Kenichi rides off with Anemone on their new motorcycle, and as they travel, they encounter Fuyu. They chat briefly, and Fuyu learns that Kenichi became a merchant and is now traveling with his new family. Kenichi doesn't know where they're heading, but Fuyu wishes them luck on their journey, and the two ride off into the distance. Kenichi and Anemone can be seen traveling, with Kenichi catching fish in the river and cooking a hearty stew. The two have been traveling for a long time at this point, so they are roughly 100 kilometers away from Dahlia, but only 6 kilometers from the next town, Astrantia. In the meantime, he's been camping out and making all sorts of tasty meals. However, since he has Anemone with him, he wants to find a place to settle down soon for her sake, as the girl has no practical skills at 12 and is still malnourished. To help locate the next town, Kenichi buys a drone with a camera and flies it into the air to scout the area. He finds out that the river leads down to a lake, so he takes Anemone and the bobcat on the motorcycle and starts riding downstream. They eventually arrive at a spot with a beautiful view of the lake. Kenichi lets Anemone and the bobcat play in the water for a bit. Since the area looks so good, he decides to set up his new house here. After clearing out a bunch of vegetation, Kenichi pulls his house out of his item box. While he's setting things up, he realizes he never gave the bobcat a name, so he spends a few minutes thinking about what to call it, and eventually settles on the name Vel. That night, he begins giving Anemone lessons on reading and writing. She's pretty smart and picks it up quickly, but when it comes to math, she struggles a little. While Anemone is racking her brain to figure out the math problems, Kenichi takes a look at his store window to see if there's any way for him to get diesel cheaply. Until now, he has been using kerosene and additives to make his own diesel, but he remembers watching a show that said he could make biodiesel from cooking oil. However, he doesn't really understand how that works, so he decides to buy a couple of books on the topic. While he's reading, Anemone finishes her homework and asks Kenichi if she can read with him. Kenichi tells her she won't be able to understand it because the book is written in the language of his homeland. However, Anemone says she wants to learn the language too. Since she's so eager, Kenichi buys a children's book for her about mermaids, and she immediately gets to work studying it. He hears rustling in the bushes. He is put on edge, so he loads his crossbow and prepares to attack. To his surprise, the source of the noise turns out to be Miley. She was devastated when Kenichi disappeared without telling her, so she worked hard to track his scent and followed him all the way here. Now that she's found him, she has nowhere else to go. She declares that she will be living with Kenichi from now on. Kenichi doesn't really mind. While having dinner, Kenichi asks Miley if anything interesting has happened since he left Dahlia. But she does recall hearing that North Pole was given land for his deeds, receiving a title as the nobles lost their peerage. With him looking to start a family, he proposed to Primula, and they're going to get married soon. Kenichi is glad that Primula managed to move on and get engaged to a nice guy like North Pole, but he can't attend the wedding since he's so far away now. Later that night, Kenichi gets in the bath with Anemone as usual, while Miley washes herself beside them. Anemone shows Miley the Japanese book Kenichi gave her, and she really likes it. Even though she can't read the words, the pictures make the book easy to understand. Hearing her say that gives Kenichi an idea. Since books are really precious in this world, he figures he could probably make a lot of profit by selling picture books. However, the stories from Japan probably won't appeal to the people of this world, so Kenichi asks Anemone and Miley if they know any local legends. One in particular stands out to Kenichi, so he asks them to tell him more about the forest elf legend. It's a story about an elf and a human who fall in love, but their union isn't accepted, so they seek help from fairies. Kenichi thinks the story is really good, so he immediately gets to work drawing illustrations for it. Once he finishes the drawings, he buys an ink press and uses it to create more copies. Miley and Anemone love their books so much. However, while they are looking at the pictures, Kenichi notices a boat approaching, and this could mean trouble. He tells the girls to head back inside for now. As the boat approaches the shore, Kenichi points his crossbow at the men aboard and demands to know why they are here. The man tells Kenichi to calm down because he's not here to cause any trouble. He's from the village of Santanka, and after seeing that someone moved in on the other side of the lake, they decided to come take a closer look to make sure there weren't any bandits. This gets Kenichi to calm down a little, so he lowers his crossbow and explains that he's a merchant who just moved in. Just then, Vel comes over to Kenichi, and the beast folk is shocked since bobcats normally never get attached to people. For Kenichi to have befriended one means he must be a good guy. Crouton decides to take the beast man's word for it, so he introduces himself to Kenichi, and the beast man does the same. Kenichi decides to show Crouton and Nyanyas around his house to prove that he isn't doing anything dangerous. Everything looks pretty normal, so Crouton apologizes for the intrusion and prepares to leave. But before he does, he notices the books Kenichi made on the table and asks if Kenichi would let him buy one for his daughter. Kenichi agrees. Once Crouton and Nyanyas are gone, Kenichi and the girls have lunch together. Afterwards, Anemone spends some time reading in the house, while Kenichi is out in the forest looking through the bushes for some medicinal herbs. But then Miley comes up to him. Since Anemone is occupied at the moment, she is hoping to have some alone time with Kenichi. He questions if she's in heat or something, but Miley reassures him that's not the case. It seems this isn't their first intimate interaction, as Kenichi checks to see if the coast is clear, then goes back into the bushes to answer her needs, and stuff happens again. A little while later, Kenichi gets to work on his latest project, and you might as well call him Walter White because he's cooking up a storm in there. Unfortunately, the hazmat suit he is wearing makes him incredibly sweaty, so he takes a break and jumps in the river. Once he gets back to work, we find out that Kenichi has been working on synthesizing biodiesel from cooking oil. Even though it is very dangerous, if Kenichi manages to pull this off, he will be able to make diesel for himself without spending a fortune. Kenichi's experiment is a success. Anemone pouts as she hasn't been able to spend much time with Kenichi. To make it up to her, he tries to make a picture book with her. When that doesn't work, he tells her she can come with him to Astrantia, with Miley tagging along into town. Their first stop upon entering the city is the Adventurers Guild, since Kenichi needs to register. But as they greet the receptionist, there are two big things Kenichi can't keep his eyes off. After snapping out of his trance, Kenichi tells the receptionist that he wants to register with the city's Adventurers Guild and Merchant Guild. The receptionist takes their IDs and heads to the back room to process the registration. When she comes back, she's a bit flustered because she just saw Kenichi's file and realizes that he's the one who defeated Shaga. Kenichi tells her to stop yelling because he's trying to keep a low profile. The receptionist quickly understands, so she tells Kenichi his registration is complete. After leaving the guild, they all sit down in the town square to have a meal. However, since spices in this country are still controlled by the Spice Syndicate, all the food here tastes like prison slop. Anemone and Miley clearly aren't enjoying their food, so Kenichi gives them a little bit of his spice blend to add some flavor. Just then, Kenichi notices a couple of thugs with anime hair prowling around. At the same time, he notices Crouton and a little girl walking into an alleyway, and something is clearly going on. But again, it's not Kenichi's problem, so he carries on with his sightseeing. While exploring, he comes across an old magic shop that looks interesting, so he heads inside. He finds an old lady running the shop. As he looks around, he notices a magic device on display, so he asks her what it does. Granny is more than happy to demonstrate its function. She pours some water into one compartment and a lot of wine into the other. As a result, all the water is separated out from the wine. The first thing that comes to Kenichi's mind after seeing this is that he could use it to produce his diesel without having to shave years off his life from chemical inhalation. He tells Granny he wants to buy the magic device, and she's shocked because no one ever actually offers to buy anything here. However, Kenichi is a paying customer, so how could she refuse? It looks like Anemone also found things she likes because she shows Kenichi a book she picked up. Granny explains that the book is a grimoire, and as soon as Kenichi hears that, he says he wants to buy the book as well. She warns him that he can't guarantee he'll be able to use it since he needs a certain level of magic power to actually activate its spells. After purchasing the book, Kenichi immediately wants to start reading it with Anemone, but Granny stops them. She explains that grimoires need to be registered before the customer is allowed to take them. Kenichi is fine with waiting, so he and the others leave to continue looking around town. However, they end up bumping into Nyanya's outside. Nyanya's is surprised to see them, but seems to be in quite a hurry, so he doesn't have time to chat. But before they can leave, the group spots Crouton being attacked in the alleyway with his daughter. Kenichi can't ignore it this time, so he is forced to step in. First, he buys a plague doctor mask to hide his identity from the thugs. The thugs have a major grudge against Crouton and are fully prepared to kill him and his daughter. But before they can, Kenichi appears behind them and starts throwing fireworks. He declares that the fireworks are one of his many magic spells. Since the thugs have never seen anything like it before, they all run away scared. After making sure Crouton is all right, they sit down by the fountain, and Crouton tells Kenichi the whole story. Back when Crouton used to work as a government official, he worked hard and arrested a bunch of members of the Spice Syndicate. Ever since then, they've been targeting him. Crouton's daughter asks if Kenichi and the others are his friends. Crouton explains that he met Kenichi a few days ago and that he's the one who made the book he bought for her. Mary gets excited after hearing that her favorite book was made by Kenichi, so she starts thanking him for it. However, Anemone gets a little jealous, so she mentions that she helped make the book as well. Mary thanks her too and asks if they can make a book together sometime. Anemone happily agrees. Kenichi is glad to see that Anemone finally has a friend the same age as her. A few days later, Crouton and his wife bring Mary to visit Kenichi and Anemone. This is the first time they've had guests, so Kenichi prepares a meal for all of them to enjoy. From there, it becomes a daily thing for all of them to hang out together while Mary and Anemone play. However, one day, Mary doesn't show up like she usually does. Instead, a desperate Crouton comes begging Kenichi for his help. He tells Kenichi that Mary got sick with one of the nation's diseases, and most children who contract it don't even survive one night. Crouton is willing to pay every coin he owns if it means Mary will survive, but he can't afford to hire a mage to cast healing magic on her. So Kenichi is his only hope. Kenichi isn't going to just stand by while Anemone's friend is suffering. He hands Crouton a pack of painkillers and tells him to give them to Mary to reduce her fever. He also makes sure to mention the correct dosage. While the painkillers will help with Mary's fever, they won't cure her. So Kenichi races off to call the magic granny for help. Later that night, they all meet at Crouton's house to see Mary. Granny can immediately tell that Mary is sick with something called Cori fever. It is treatable, but it requires the seeds of a special flower that only grows out in the forest. Someone needs to retrieve those seeds before morning. So, Kenichi, Crouton, and the Beastmen all head out to find them. However, as they leave, the Spice Syndicate thugs who had been watching the whole time realize this is their chance to strike now that Kenichi and Crouton are gone. The story continues with Kenichi and the others soon arriving at the river where the Chori flower seeds can be found. Kenichi pulls out an inflatable raft and rows out into the water to reach the flowers. It doesn't take long for him to find a bunch of them, so he picks one of the flower seeds and hands it to Crouton, who is incredibly thankful for all his help. However, their mission isn't over yet. They still need to get the seed back to Mary so she can be cured. Unfortunately, they've got another problem on their hands, and it turns out to be a pack of black wolves. Kenichi has dealt with black wolves before, so he quickly buys 2 swords from his store and hands them to Crouton and the Beastman. The most important thing is getting the medicine back to Mary. Kenichi
One day
tells
after
Crouton
school,
and the Beastman to
Asahi,
run back
Kurumi,
to the house as fast as they can while he holds the wolves off. However, a small group of wolves breaks off from the pack and corners Crouton. Kenichi realizes they're in danger, so he rushes back over to help as quickly as he can. But while he's doing that, the thugs from earlier begin to make their move. All the wolves stop attacking Crouton. Kenichi sees this and realizes that the thugs must have been controlling the wolves all along. Vel realizes what's going on, and the bobcat attacks the thugs and the dogman, causing him to drop the whistle. Since the dogman lost his whistle, Kenichi tells Nyanyas to take Crouton and get out of there while he has the chance. The dogman manages to get Vel off and grabs his whistle to order the wolves to go after Crouton, but the wolves seem too scared to move. None of them have any idea what's going on, but all of a sudden, a massive bear appears. The wolves realize just how much danger they are in, so they flee the forest. The first one to fall victim to the bear's rampage is the dogman. After hitting the ground, he definitely looks dead. The bear then switches its target and goes after Kenichi instead, but Vel stands in its way, unafraid. Kenichi shoots his arrows at the bear's head while Vel scratches up its face. Kenichi thanks Vel for the help and then pulls out more fireworks to try and scare off the bear. This time, it's 10 times the usual amount, but to his surprise, the bear actually eats the fireworks, resulting in a massive explosion inside its mouth. While the bear is still stunned from the fireworks, Kenichi seizes the opportunity. He brings down his heavy machinery and whacks the bear in the face, finishing it off. Now that the bear is dead, Kenichi stores its body in his inventory along with his backhoe. He's glad he made it out of that fight alive, but he still has to figure out what to do with the unconscious dogman. A little while later, Kenichi returns to Crouton's house to see if Mary is doing better. Thanks to the medicine he got, she's going to make a full recovery. Crouton and his wife are deeply grateful to Kenichi. Kenichi isn't the type to go around saving others, but just then he remembers that he has something important to discuss with Crouton. The two of them head outside, and Kenichi tells Crouton that he managed to make a deal with the dogman in the woods. He bandaged the dogman up so he wouldn't die from his wounds. In exchange, the dogman promised that he would never harm Crouton or his family again, although he admitted he has no control over what the rest of the thugs do. Since there are a lot of them who hold major grudges against Crouton, they will surely continue coming after him. Although, it might be a different story if Crouton were to leave this town. Kenichi tells Crouton that it might be a good idea to leave, as it would ensure that no one comes after him or his family again. The dogman agreed to the terms, although he admitted he has no control over what the rest of the thugs do. Kenichi thinks about it for a minute and comes up with a good solution to Crouton's dilemma. He happens to know a knight named North Pole who just became a baron and is currently recruiting people to live on his land. The next day, Kenichi finally returns home and tells the others what happened while he was gone. However, Miley is upset because he went on such an amazing adventure without telling her. Kenichi says there was no time to come get Miley, plus he needed someone to look after Anemone while he was gone, so there was no way Miley could have gone with him. A few days later, Crouton and his family finally decide to move away for their safety. Crouton heads to North Pole's territory first to set things up, while Mary and her mother stay behind because Mary still hasn't fully recovered yet. While Kenichi and Miley are taking a walk outside, Miley catches the scent of blood. That's when she notices a dogman behind a tree, so he asks him what he's doing here. The dogman simply states that he made a promise not to harm Crouton, so he was just tying up some loose ends to make sure no other thugs go after him. After all, dogmen always keep their promises. However, after his murderous binge, the dogman can't exactly stay in this city anymore, so he's going to leave as well. Later that day, Kenichi heads into town to sell the bear he killed at the guild. The man in charge of dissection is amazed that Kenichi was able to defeat a tusk bear on his own, but Kenichi says he just got lucky. He would like to keep the meat and the magic stone from the bear for himself and sell the rest to the guild. The man says he understands, but with how big the bear is, it's going to take him a long time to finish dissecting it. Kenichi is fine with waiting a little, and since it's still only midday, he decides to head home and finish up one of his projects. As he walks past a shop, he spots a familiar face inside. It seems like she's looking for someone important to her. As he's walking around, he gets the chills, like he's in trouble or someone is trying to kill him. Back at Kenichi's house, he finally gets around to using that artifact he bought to make his biodiesel. After a lot of chemistry that would probably blow your house up if you tried it, Kenichi is finally able to create what he believes to be pure diesel for his engines. The only way to know for sure if it worked is to test it on his generator. When he turns it on, the generator doesn't explode, so his experiment is a success. With this method, he is able to make a liter of diesel for only 300 yen, as opposed to the 3,000 yen per liter he was spending before. Now that that's done, Kenichi leaves out some food for Miley and Anemone because he is heading back into town to pick up a few things. First, he heads to the old woman's shop to see if his grimoire is finally ready. Thankfully, she's done with all the registration procedures, so Kenichi can have his grimoire. Kenichi takes a look at the book and is surprised to see that it has a magic stone embedded in it. The woman explains that the incantation recorded in the grimoire is linked to the magic stone, so without it, the spell won't activate. Next on his agenda, he heads to the Adventurers Guild to pick up his items. When he arrives, everything is already packed up and ready to go. He then heads to the front desk to collect his payment for the parts he sold to the guild. However, Kenichi can hardly focus on the money with those two melons dangling in front of him. As he walks down the street, he gets a strange feeling, like someone is watching him. It turns out Kenichi's feeling was spot on, because he is being watched. Suddenly, he's grabbed from behind. It's Primula. He is shocked to see her and asks what she's doing all the way out here. Primula blushes, feeling embarrassed, and asks him how he could have been so cruel as to leave without her. Kenichi tries to explain that the only reason he left Dahlia was because of the nobles trying to capture him. Primula still thinks Kenichi should have at least said goodbye. Seeing that her outburst is causing a scene, Primula takes him to the hotel she's staying at and begins yelling at Kenichi again for leaving without giving her a chance to repay him for all the things he has done for her. Kenichi doesn't really think he did that much, but Primula reminds him that he saved her life, so she owes him a huge debt of gratitude. Kenichi is starting to get a little uncomfortable, so he changes topics and mentions how he heard rumors about Primula getting married to North Pole. However, while there were certainly discussions about it, Primula ultimately turned down the engagement. But that's beside the point. Primula says she's not going home unless Kenichi agrees to go with her, but Kenichi has no intentions of leaving. So Primula says she will just stay here with him. Then Kenichi can tell that she's not bluffing, so he doesn't have many options here. But still, he's surprised that she managed to find out that he was living near the city. Primula explains that after Kenichi left, she spent every day stalking the guild registry in each town she visited to see if Kenichi's name would pop up somewhere in another city. And sure enough, she found his name one day on an updated registry. So she immediately got on a carriage and headed straight here. And now that she has found him again, she gets straight to the point and asks Kenichi to put his eggplant somewhere devious. Backshots an old man can give her tonight. Kenichi is taken aback, but she says to make a woman out of her tonight. Kenichi isn't a stranger to this, as this is the third woman who was hungry for his meat, so he agrees to Primula's request. As soon as they get up to the room, Primula begins taking off all of her clothes because she can't wait any longer. And you know what happened from there. The next morning, Kenichi returns to his house with Primula, and it looks like they're going to have their first fight as she sees he left her behind but brought the cat girl with him. As she does not want to be his side chick, it looks like he chose to bring Miley with him and not her. Kenichi tells her that he didn't choose to bring Miley. Miley just tracked him down on her own. The only one he chose to bring with him was Anemone. But is Primula really going to let herself be jealous of a child, with her deciding to let him off the hook today? Kenichi is already having second thoughts about bringing her. Primula calms down for now, and Anemone makes Kenichi promise that he won't bring back any other women. This gets Primula upset again because he paused before agreeing. She thinks Kenichi has been bringing women home. Then Vel arrives, and Primula feels inferior, as even the bobcat beat her to Kenichi. Later that night, Kenichi gets a bath ready, but when it's time to get in, all the girls say they want to get in with him. He doesn't want to have to deal with this, so he decides to just buy a second barrel. Once everyone is done with their baths, Kenichi sets up a blow dryer. And after everyone's dry, he sits down at the table to try out the grimoire. He reads the incantations for a fireball spell. But as he completes the spell, his fears are confirmed because nothing happened. This means he has no magic power and he just wasted a ton of money on a book he can't use. He starts thinking of ways to sell the grimoire so he can make some of his money back. But while he was distracted, Anemone picked it up and started reading it. Only this time, something is actually happening. It looks like Anemone possesses quite a bit of magic power because she was able to cast the fireball perfectly on her first try. The adults work together to make it on fire anymore. Once that's done, Anemone starts apologizing for causing so much trouble. He's much more amazed that Anemone was able to use magic. But all of a sudden, Anemone passes out, causing everyone to panic. They carry her to bed, and thankfully, by the next morning, her fever had begun to settle down. Kenichi gives her a can of peaches to help raise her blood sugar. Anemone enjoys it, and everyone else has some peaches as well. Primula is surprised by how much sugar is in them, not to mention the preservatives. It's the kind of luxury only nobles can dream of. Anemone was fine after a little bed rest. A few days later, when Mary had fully recovered from her illness, Kenichi invited her and her mother over for a barbecue, since he still had a lot of bear meat. Eating wild meat you hunted yourself with friends is one of the many perks of the slow, quiet life. The guests comment that the bear meat is tough and has a strong smell. Kenichi, being proud of his cooking skills, can't let that slide. So he tenderizes the meat and adds a secret sauce made of soy sauce, cayenne pepper, dried mikan, and orange peel. The result? A spicy, flavorful dish that earns him praise all around. Next up, bear curry. Just like in his previous life, Kenichi believes curry is life. Curry is justice. While the kids play with their new picture books, Primula, seeing one for the first time, asks Kenichi about them. She's already brainstorming how she could sell these. In seconds, she visualizes a full business model, identifies a target audience, and begins planning how to expand sales all the way to the royal capital. With Kenichi's permission, she wants to launch a new picture book business in Astrancia. Kenichi is reminded that, yep, he really did get involved with a woman who's a natural-born merchant. Not wanting to focus only on children's books, Kenichi is also interested in selling bear soup, since no other region has the spices to go with the curry. Mary's mother, Sainaria, then speaks up, wanting to repay Kenichi's kindness. She offers to help run the food stall they hope to set up in Astrancia. She also believes she can help Kenichi's wife, seeing as she's new to the area. Kenichi doesn't hesitate to hire her, but when he turns to Primula, she's still lost in her fantasy world. Mary also offers to help since she's old enough to start working now. And with everyone getting involved in the new stall, Anemone doesn't want to be left out either, so she eagerly volunteers to help too. The next day, Kenichi takes Primula to the city gate on his motorcycle and buys a food cart for her to use. As the day goes on, the cart begins to pick up steam. Customers start flooding in from all over the place, having never tasted food like this before. Unfortunately, with all that attention, they also end up attracting some unwanted guests, scammers. Two con artists plant a bug in one of the food bowls and accuse Primula of serving contaminated food. Chaos starts brewing. Meanwhile, Kenichi is out surveying land with his drone. From above, the forest atop the hill looks untouched. He's confident he'll find medicinal herbs and forest vegetables there. What he doesn't expect, however, is the abundance of gemstones embedded in the rocks. These gems shimmer with strange, vivid colors unlike anything he's seen before. Though he isn't sure what they are, he's convinced they have to be valuable. It looks like he might be turning into a miner soon, but that'll have to wait. He needs to head back to town to pick up his wife and the others. Kenichi finds everyone waiting, all packed up. Primula excitedly tells him they completely sold out on their first day. Kenichi is thrilled by the news, but then he notices a new face, a beast woman standing with them. His sausage gets curious for reasons he can't control, so he asks who she is. Primula explains everything, how two men tried to blackmail her by planting a bug in the food, and how, before the situation escalated, this beast woman, Nyamena, showed up. She had witnessed the scam unfolding and wasn't about to let it slide. She exposed the two con men right on the spot. They bolted in fear. Impressed by Nyamena's sharp eyes and no-nonsense attitude, Primula hired her as a bodyguard for the rest of the day. Kenichi thanks Nyamena for stepping in, but she just shrugs it off, saying it was nothing. In fact, she feels lucky. Getting paid a silver coin just to glare at idiots is a pretty sweet deal. The group heads back to Kenichi's home, where Miley and Anemone come out to greet them. However, the moment Miley lays eyes on the new woman, her expression turns hostile. Kenichi quickly explains that Nyamena is just here to help as Primula's bodyguard. To thank her for her help, he invites her over for dinner. Miley calms down. as long as this cat girl isn't another competitor for Kenichi's sausage. As she says this, she spots the great bobcat and pays her respects. Nia tries some of Kenichi's signature bear meat and is blown away by how good it tastes. She jokes that the only thing that could make it better is a glass of wine, and being the born flexer he is, Kenichi casually pulls some out. Nia practically melts in bliss after taking a sip, calling it the best wine she's ever had. Kenichi, meanwhile, quietly thinks she's overreacting. It was literally the cheapest bottle he found on Amazon. Anemone offers to heat up the baths and does so using her fireball spell, which impresses Naya with its magical flair. Without hesitation, Naya jumps into the bath with Primula, while the latter gives Kenichi an annoyed glance, checking to see if he's peeking. Beastfolk don't really care about public nudity after all. The dryer, and later the soft bed, she starts feeling like a minister or noble. She's already thinking about moving in permanently. Miley, however, is not thrilled. There are already too many women around. As she and Naya start bickering over territory, they glance over and notice Kenichi teaching Anemone some basic writing and math. He explains that he wants to broaden her horizons. It bothers him how difficult life is for women without an education in this world. Naya agrees, adding that without knowledge, most women are stuck either working as clerks or selling themselves. Kenichi then asks if Anemone would be willing to go into town with Primula and the others next time to learn more about running the food cart business. But Anemone shakes her head. She'd rather study magic and become a proper adventurer, especially if it means staying close to Kenichi. With the three already looking like a little family and all of them sharing the same bed, the next day, Primula and her crew return to town, and the food cart business stays just as busy. With Naya now working as their full-time bodyguard, there's no more need to worry about scammers or freeloaders. Meanwhile, Mary receives a letter from her father saying he's almost finished setting things up. Back at home, Kenichi wraps up his construction work and gets ready to excavate the gemstones. Primula, curious, wants to know more about it and what he's been hiding in his item box. Kenichi bluntly tells her he won't unlock the password to his phone. It's the same response he gives the other girls too. Primula tries to argue, but Kenichi shuts it down by reminding her she's free to go back home anytime if she doesn't like it. It sounds suspicious, but he seals the conversation with a kiss, effectively ending the debate. Nia, watching from the side, groans in annoyance and tells them not to do stuff like that in front of her. Kenichi jokes, asking if she has any takers. She scoffs at the idea. The following day, the group returns to the forest. After Kenichi clears out some vegetation, they start foraging for rare plants. Kenichi resumes carving into the mountain using an electric hammer he brought with him. Eventually, he prees loose one of the gemstones and tosses it into his item box for appraisal. The results? 200,000 yen each. And there are a lot of them. Kenichi had hit the jackpot. Again. The group returned home. Kenichi had the girls help him grind bear meat and taught them how to wrap dumplings. They soaked the meat in a milk marinade and added mushrooms. Miley and Naya couldn't help with folding due to their fur, but once everything was cooked, the gyoza turned out amazing, especially with the yellow sauce Kenichi had prepared. When he told them the sauce was mayonnaise, everyone was shocked. Nia mentioned that mayo was trending in the Empire lately, supposedly invented by a mage using magic. Kenichi knew immediately this had to be another otherworlder like himself. Primula asked if Kenichi used magic too, but he revealed that he'd just made it with eggs. She was astonished that something so good could be made without magic and begged him for the recipe. Kenichi told her to wait until after he finished eating. Of course, Primula had to find a way to sell it. She asked if she could offer his gyoza recipe at her stall. Kenichi agreed, though he warned her that gyoza takes a lot of effort. The shell has to be tough enough to hold the soup but still soft enough to bite into. Primula said that wouldn't be a problem. She'd just hire more help. Impressed by her drive, Kenichi decided to show them one more recipe. He led everyone outside to show off his hibachi skills. He summoned some meat and alcohol, then used a large fireball to grill a steak. When Naya took her first bite, she looked stunned. Then Kenichi mentioned that he'd used liquor in the marinade. The moment he said liquor, Naya pounced, begging for a drink. Kenichi gave in, but warned her this wasn't the cheap stuff from earlier. It was strong. Naturally, she ignored the warning, downed the entire glass in one go, and got drunk almost instantly. She hugged Kenichi in thanks, teasing him and asking if he was trying to win her over through her stomach. Mary's mom gave them a suspicious look, thinking they might be about to do something else. But Miley wasn't having it. She grabbed Naya by the hair and pulled her off him. Naya swore she wasn't trying to steal Kenichi. She said she was fine, just living in the shed if it meant getting to enjoy good meals with everyone. Kenichi didn't see the harm and allowed it. Primula agreed, saying Nia only cared about food. There was no need to worry about her trying to seduce Kenichi. That just made Miley mad. She expected Primula to back her up. Primula then glanced at Kenichi, trying to gauge if he had other ideas about Nia. Later that night, Kenichi showed Nia the room he had prepared for her. She asked how much rent she'd have to pay, but Kenichi told her it was free. This shocked her, making her wonder if he was trying to tame her. He clarified that it was just part of the deal as long as she kept helping Primula. Hearing that made her a little disappointed. As Kenichi turned to leave, Nia grabbed him. Since he was already this late in a woman's room, she teased he might as well stay. But Miley, sensing danger from a mile away, burst in to stop her. Nia waved her off, saying she just wanted a turn, not seeing the issue. Before long, the two of them started doing a traditional beast folk dance to try and charm him, each wondering which of them he'd choose. A month passed. Kenichi continued mining, earning around 15 million yen from the gemstones. But even that paled in comparison to Primula's food stall, which had grown into a full-fledged company called Corolla. It now employed dozens and brought in over 200,000 yen per day, more than 100 million annually. It was a shining example of a merchant's power, unlike the phony merchant Kenichi liked to pretend he was. As he was admiring her progress, one of the employees greeted him as Primula's father. She introduced herself as Iris. Primula, visibly annoyed, quickly corrected her. "This is my husband," she said, much to Iris's shock. Kenichi recognized Iris. She was the person Primula had chosen to manage the restaurant so she could focus on opening a new branch. Primula beamed proudly. "I'm building companies like this because you like to travel. Just in case you run off again, and I want to be able to track you down without tanking my profits." Despite her cheery tone, the sting in her words was obvious. She still hadn't fully forgiven him for what happened before. Unfortunately, that peace might not last much longer. Word of his accomplishments had reached the royal castle. They'd learned that Kenichi was not only running profitable businesses, but also an accomplished adventurer. And now, the princess herself was eager to meet him. Primula goes to a meeting at the castle to meet with the wife of Viscount Eupatorium, Kanan Eupatorium. She is rather impressed with how well Primula has done for herself after only being in the city for a few weeks. She knows she's the daughter of a merchant who's become a noble, but on her own has created the Corolla restaurant. Meanwhile, Kenichi decides to head back to the magic shop to see if there's anything useful he can buy. While there, he spots an explosion magic book. He remembers watching Konosuba and dreams of seeing Megumin shouting "explosion," instantly buying the book. Seeing that his daughter found her own book, the old lady throws it in for free, this being a household spell book. When Primula gets back home, she discusses the details of the meeting with the Viscount's wife wanting for them to make her a custom brooch. She visited Dahlia, who had a beautiful noble boasting about a brooch sold by Mallow Company, being the classic battle of material items between noble women. Kenichi doesn't mind since it's more business for him, so he pulls a brooch out of his storage, and by chance, the engraving on the brooch happens to look a lot like Eupatorium. So Kenichi tells Primula to say it was custom made because that will get Eupatorium to pay a higher price. Kenichi heads outside, but before he can start working on anything, Miley asks him if he wants to come to a dungeon with her. Kenichi had no idea that dungeons existed in this world, so he's really excited to go and wants to talk this over dinner. Miley is mad as she doesn't want to give Naya the chance to come along. Just then, Anemone comes over wanting to go. Kenichi tries to convince her not to, but in the end, the child gets her way. They leave and soon arrive at the base of a cliff. Kenichi gets everyone some headlamps and they all head in. They soon find some shiny rocks in the wall and Kenichi instantly hears the sound of money rolling into his bank account. So he pulls out his electric drill and starts mining. Miley doesn't like the noise but notices something in the cave. Using the lights, they spot a cave spider. Kenichi fires a crossbow with an arrow, but the skin is as hard as stone. Anemone is scared, so Miley decides to take her to a safe distance away to avoid the spider. Kenichi fires multiple firecrackers at the spider as a way to escape. He summons his bike so he and the others can escape. He then drives as fast as he can until they make it out of the cave. Getting off the bike, he goes to comfort Anemone, as he tells her it's to be expected. She wasn't ready to fight. Naya and Primula are told what happened. With Nia mad, she wasn't invited to join in on the fun. Nia yells at Miley as she knows this was the cat girl's fault, with the two women having a rivalry. On the other side, Kenichi is upset he left his generator and a bunch of expensive crystals. Naya wants to come along next time, but Kenichi reminds her that her job is technically to guard Primula. Just then, Primula says she was planning to take some time off anyways so she can go. Noticing her tone from earlier and the tone she's using now, Kenichi feels that he's in the doghouse and asks if everything is all right with her. Later, Kenichi takes out a book for Anemone. She excitedly runs over to the table so she can start practicing, but before she finishes the chant, Kenichi stops her because he doesn't want the house to explode. He tells her to wait and to do it outside. The next day, they begin practicing to take down the spider with Anemone's attack spell and some bug spray. They all head in together. After walking through the cave for a bit, they arrive at the spot where they got attacked by the spider. Kenichi finds his generator and jackhammer on the floor nearby and recalls that the spider showed up as soon as he started using this thing and starts hammering away at the wall to lure out the spider. A few seconds later, the spider emerges from the hole, so Kenichi summons several cans of bug spray and has everyone aim straight for the spider. Once it has been hit with a good amount of poison, Kenichi tells Anemone to use her fire magic on it. Anemone does as instructed. This time she shoots a fireball straight at the spider, lighting it on fire and forcing it to retreat. Everyone congratulates Anemone for doing such a good job, but they still need to finish the spider off. So they follow it through the tunnel and eventually find the spider sitting in an open cavern. They aren't letting it get away, so they all start spraying it with even more bug spray. This manages to kill the spider, but the group didn't think this through, as of course, if there's one bug, that means there's several. They soon spot another spider, this one being bigger. They try to run away, but the spider blocks the exit as it sees them as prey. The spider attacks them. As they are now, they are done for, so Vel steps up and runs across the spider's legs to claw out its eye. Now that it's blind, it can't attack them anymore. Kenichi tells everyone to unload all their spray cans on it. He then asks Anemone to use her fire magic on the spider. Anemone does, but even though it sets the spider on fire, it doesn't actually do much damage. Kenichi assumes the spider must have some kind of resistance to magic, but even if that's the case, he has no idea why the spider isn't attacking them. Naya explains that since they've already blinded, the spider probably intends to block the exit with its body until everyone in here starves to death. Kenichi is pissed that the spider would try using such a dirty tactic, but since they aren't in any immediate danger, he takes a moment to go grab the other spider corpse from across the cave. While he was doing that, Naya and Miley were busy spraying as much insecticide on the spider as possible, but no matter how many cans they use, that thing just won't go down. They're running out of options, so Kenichi decides to take drastic measures and buys an excavator with 157 horsepower. Nia is shocked by what she's seeing. Kenichi climbs into the control box of the excavator, and Anemone tells him she wants to ride with him, and she won't take no for an answer. Me personally, I'm not letting a kid talk to me like that, but Kenichi allows it. He charges at the spider with the excavator, but the spider fights back and grabs him. Luckily, Kenichi manages to throw the spider to the ground. He then tries to finish the spider off by crushing it with the giant hammer from heaven. He lands the hit, but the spider doesn't go down. Instead, it climbs on the machine. Kenichi looks over to see Anemone chant a spell, yelling "Explosion!" like another anime character we know. The blast sends the spider flying into the wall. Still not enough, so he crushes it against the ceiling until the spider finally dies. Later, he starts to hunt for crystals to make the money back. He goes home and shows Primula, and naturally, she wasn't thrilled. The next part is such a Japanese thing to do, and I can't say I do the same, but he turns the spider egg into a custard, and because it's anime, it tastes good. Primula is impressed because she can tell Kenichi made these with cheese. And cheese is really expensive in this world because it's only made in a particular region. However, Kenichi tells her it's actually really easy to make cheese. As soon as he says this, Primula suddenly gets in his face and him to teach her how to make cheese. He then breaks down the recipe: some milk, apple vinegar, and a cheesecloth. And once you're done mixing, you'll have a nice serving of cottage cheese. Everyone tries a piece, and they're in awe that Kenichi knows how to make something so tasty. But all of a sudden, Primula asks Kenichi if it would be all right for her to share this recipe with Lady Eupatorium. Kenichi isn't fond of the idea as it would get him more involved with nobles, being the reason he left his previous location. Primula sadly understands, and Naya decides to explain why Primula asked this. Recently, both the branch and main restaurant have faced harassment, with it getting out of hand. Men would come in and just cause problems, like bumping into people or disturbing the business, all because they don't get their spices from the Spice Syndicate. The culprit behind this is an old man, Thogalum, a corrupt merchant. Originally, Primula knew about the man's history, but didn't want to trouble Kenichi with her business problems. Kenichi believes she can rely on him, as he just plans on using force, with Naya and Miley on board with this. But Primula stops him, as merchants like her have their own way of dealing with this. Now, Kenichi understands her way has to do with contacting nobles. He doesn't like this, and Primula knows it, but Kenichi allows her to try it her way. The next day, the corrupt merchant Thogalum gets a note from the Viscount that says anyone found harassing the Corolla restaurant will be severely punished. He reads it and scoffs, but admits he didn't expect Primula to have these connections. Still, he says it's no matter. He's already planned for this. A day later, Primula and Kenichi bow in front of the noble they called for help, with her arriving by sea just to see them. Later, they sit at a table where she asks if he was really the same mage who defeated Shaga and summoned an iron beast. He tries to deny the accomplishment, but the woman cuts him off. She's already done her research. Seeing he can't lie, he questions why she's here. In the next moment, the woman bows, asking for help. Sometime later, the group can be seen leaving the city in a Hummer. Apparently, the Kingdom of Kadan is currently constructing a huge irrigation canal so they can increase the farmlands. A while ago, her husband went to the royal capital in front of all the nobles and was embarrassed, as his land was the only one not to meet the deadlines. Worst of all, it had no completion date. Her husband felt that others were doing this on purpose, like Viscount Thunbergia. Still, the husband put it on the honor of Eupatorium that they will complete it. If it fails, they could lose their titles as nobles, meaning the land and the funding. She needs this done within a month, with her willing to pay any price as a reward. Eupatorium reaffirms that she'd do anything, even her body. Kenichi doesn't hesitate in declining, which is wild, as not even the guards were fazed, and she did this in front of Primula. The lady then is willing to offer a high-level protection defense spell that can even shield them from a dragon. Hearing this, he thinks about his daughter's safety and would love for her to have it, so he accepts. Still, as a sort of payment, he was given some furniture and old stuff from her family, with Kenichi appraising it worth at 120 million yen. In the present day, while they drive around, the woman again asks if he's still not willing to take up the offer of her body. Now, I gotta question if the husband is doing his job in the bedroom, if she's letting the guards or other nobles take a hit at her, because she further presses this question, asking why he doesn't want to sleep with her, as she knows he's slept with beast folk before. Instead of responding to that, he just flatly denies her, saying he's not interested in sleeping next to her as he has a wife, labeling her as a certified cheating wife. Eventually, they arrive at the construction site, with them making good progress. But then he sees that they've only gotten 1/3 of the way, as they still have to cut down trees. Kenichi estimates that at this pace, it would take them a full year just to cut the trees down. Kenichi happens to run into Miley's brothers, which is nice. Good to see them again. But Kenichi is curious why they're out here working construction, as they should have tons of money from killing Shaga. They should have been set for a long time. But one thing led to another, and one catnip binge later, they were broke again, with Miley not being surprised, as they always end up going broke again. Suddenly, Naya comes up to see what's going on, and the second Miley's brothers see her, they practically fall in love, as she's beautiful. Naya is happy to receive the compliments, but Miley is pissed her brothers like this tiger girl. Lady Eupatorium introduces Kenichi to Porridge, the man she hired to oversee the construction work. She then tells them she brought Kenichi so he could help speed up the progress, calling him a mage, but Kenichi tries to clarify that he's also a merchant. Eupatorium refuses to call him one, rather liking having a mage by her side. The man then gives him the list for the bill for the equipment she will need. While Eupatorium is looking at it, Primula takes a look and she's disgusted by the prices. One axe is 10 silver coins. She continues to look at the list, asking how they can overprice everything. Another man, clearly looking down on her, comes forward to justify the price, saying she's not taking into account the transportation costs, as they also have a business to run. The merchant then comments that they're the only business in town she could get so many axes from. Primula pulls the ultimate reverse Uno card on the man, asking Kenichi to bring out an axe. To prove her point, when Kenichi does, the axe cost 1 silver, with her adding they could provide the same number at a cheaper cost. This shocks them, and Kenichi says it's the friend discount. This lights up Eupatorium's face, excitedly asking if they're really friends. Hearing this, the woman says she'd like to do her business with Kenichi instead. Hearing this, the merchant becomes enraged, asking her to reconsider, saying that Kenichi is just a mage. Kenichi cuts in, saying he's a merchant, with him and Eupatorium going back and forth. Eventually, the merchant gets angered to the point of subtly threatening her, saying he's part of the Thogalum trading company. The lady is unaware and doesn't care. Primula's face darkens, and Kenichi asks if it's the same guy she has a problem with. She nods back. Kenichi thinks more about what he knows, that this corrupt merchant is deeply rooted in the administration system here. But what makes it worse is that the Lord, Eupatorium's husband, has been using him to take care of his dirty work on occasion. So this could create friction in the future from the Lord's wife being unaware of this. Still, Kenichi isn't worried about nobles or merchants. His job is to prioritize finishing this canal. The beast folk prepare tubs of oil for Kenichi's backhoe, with the lady shocked by the amount he's using, enough to make a poorer man go bankrupt. The backhoe needs 400 liters of oil to run for a full day, but he has no other choice. He summons it and gets to digging, pulling out trees along the way. Primula also hands out axes for the beast folk. By the end of the day, every beast folk gives an offering to the bobcat as they see it as a messenger from the gods. Lady Kanan's carriage seems to be running late, so Kenichi invites her for dinner. With the help of his daughter, he serves her chicken courage. The noblewoman can't believe they cook outside, but is taken aback even more by the lack of manners, eating it with their hands. The moment she eats it, she doesn't question it anymore, as it has a crispy texture but is juicy. The smell of the food gets the attention of the brothers, so Kenichi offers them some food. But they decline, as they'd feel bad eating in front of their kin, with Kenichi seeing how many would be going hungry. He's informed that they can't afford to go back and forth from the tavern and construction site. Primula gets excited as she wants to serve all of them food, wanting to charge them a quick but fair price. Soon after, Primula and Naya serve them food, with everyone enjoying the night, treating it like a party. That night, Lady Kanan watches the scene with a smile. Later that night, Kenichi sets up a bath, being closer to a modern tub. But as Kenichi is about to leave, she grabs his arm and orders him to bathe with her. It's kinda crazy this show put in an NTR plot, but okay. Kenichi is trying his best to resist Eupatorium because they're both technically married with families. Kanan reminds Kenichi that his daughter isn't related to him. Kenichi admits this is true, but he treats her as family, just like a wife is originally a stranger until you marry her. Kanan then shares why she's envious of what they have, as she's never smiled at the dinner table. As a daughter, her mother and father never cared about her opinion, only what noble they could sell her off to. Still, Kenichi is focused and unfazed by this sad story, as he still doesn't want to clap her cheeks. She stops him, not believing he's unaffected by her story, but then tries to convince him, saying she's willing and completely exposed right now. Kenichi still doesn't want to do it when his daughter is so close by and has to shut the door, not seeing why this woman is so thirsty for sausage. The next day is crazy, as Kenichi wakes up to see Kanan dressed like a normal woman with no makeup, serving the common people. He now finds her alluring enough to sleep with, and as he flirts, the other girls get suspicious, none of them liking what they see. Kanan likes his response and tells him she's ready to go, but Kenichi doesn't want to fall for her. She comments they've got a whole month, so sooner or later, she's going to make him give in. A few moments later, the corrupt merchant from earlier is mad that she didn't give him business last night, yelling at them. Primula reminds them of her family name being the Mallow Trading Company, with a simple principle her father taught her, to do fair business. So, if they don't like it, then they should also provide fairer business. After this exchange, the restaurant tavern offered better deals for the workers they would house. The work continues like usual, and after the trees have been cut down, Kenichi drives past the workers and stores the debris in his item box. Later, Lady Kanan's servants come by for her, but she still ends up doing some of the cleaning, because she wants to. At night, Kenichi notices he's running low on water. Seeing that the beast folk always seem clean, he asks how they've been managing. Turns out there's a spring nearby they run to, but it's too far for humans. So, Kenichi offers them some liquor in exchange for fetching water. They agree, and he ends up securing a good amount. Everyone's happy. They get their alcohol, and Kenichi gets to sleep, until Lady Kanan hops on his back like a drunk college kid who just found out the frat party's still going. Primula's annoyed, but lets it happen. In the end, Kanan just passes out drunk. Later, Kenichi shows Eupatorium a contract she signed. She doesn't remember all the details, but From the look on her face, she thinks he's planning to make her hide her identity and wander the streets, sleeping with filthy, vulgar men for profit. Kenichi has to stop and question why her imagination went straight there. Like, damn, yeah, this noble's definitely for the streets. The fact that her servants don't even blink is telling. Kenichi just wanted her to quit pestering him for booty calls. Eupatorium can't believe this, reminding him that she has the necessary assets he's clearly into, but Kenichi is locked in. He's not folding. Eventually, they successfully complete Astrantia's portion of the canal, meeting the deadline. A celebration is held in front of the royal family, and Kenichi is pressured to go by his wife. The townspeople marvel at how beautiful the project looks. In the middle of the ceremony, Eupatorium publicly thanks the mage Kenichi for his contribution, calling him up to demonstrate his unique magic. Now he has no choice, so he just rolls with it, summoning the backhoe and putting on a little demonstration for the crowd. He even throws in a few tricks. Then that one salty old noble, who previously trashed her husband, tries to start drama, but unlike her husband, Eupatorium knows how to talk premium shit. She shuts him down so hard he walks home salty. Meanwhile, Primula stays quiet, more serious than usual. When Kenichi asks her what's up, she explains that inside that noble's carriage is the one who got Shaga to abduct her. Later, Kenichi finally meets Eupatorium's husband, a weak-willed man who usually lets others run the land his father gave him. This has led to corrupt people taking over projects, and he now realizes it almost cost him everything. He promises to do better. Then he brings up a picture book he got from Primula's store. Turns out the dude is a massive art nerd and wants to know how it was made. Kenichi doesn't mind explaining how the printing press works. The guy actually cries. He's a terrible author who now has a way to share his books. Kenichi, seeing this, is conflicted. Should he be worried about this guy fixing the land or bonking his wife? Later, over tea, the Lord offers to hand over financial control of the land to Primula so he can see if he's being extorted. Primula says the job would be too much and suggests he get help from her father of the Mallow Trading Company. The Lord is shocked. He had no idea she was the daughter of the Mallow Trading Company, a major power player. Then the Lord starts worrying about the trouble this could cause with Thogalum, since Mallow would now be involved in Astrantia's politics. Kenichi asks why that's a problem. Thogalum isn't the Lord. You are. To the man's embarrassment, he admits that they're so poor as nobles, they can't even afford knights. If it came down to force, they'd lose. Just then, Eupatorium lights up. We have Kenichi, she says excitedly, reminding him that they're friends, so they can just ask Kenichi for help. Kenichi sighs, realizing he has no choice now. He agrees to help. He relocates the house, and his daughter brings him the spell book for the super defense spell. It all ends with Primula and Kenichi's daughter bickering over who gets to sit with him in the tub. In the end, his wife wins, joining him to watch the stars together. We see in the royal capital, Princess Lilith goes to see her mother while she's working because she heard something interesting happened. The queen already knows, as it has to do with the canal deadline. She tells her that the Viscount of Thunbergia would constantly send her messages about how the Viscount of Eupatorium wouldn't make the deadline, saying this brings into question their ability to govern. The man wanted to stretch his own territory by taking theirs, claiming he could finish the construction in time. But in the end, Eupatorium managed to get a mage's help, and he was able to summon an iron beast to complete it on time. This gets Lilith interested in seeing it. The princess is able to guess what her mother wants, as she wants to test and see if Kenichi has the power of a sacred knight. Meanwhile, Kenichi is still enjoying his bath with everyone when Naya mentions how amazing it is that Anemone is able to use magic. So she concludes that Anemone must have inherited her magic genetics from her mother. Kenichi asks Anemone about her real mother, but the girl has no memory of her. The woman who raised her said she took her from a dying woman on the street. Later, he goes to the old mage's shop to ask if she might have seen Anemone's mother. The woman doesn't know the full circumstances, but has a theory that the mother might have been a black-haired woman, Silver Armeria. That woman went missing 10 years ago, and the grimoire Anemone is using once belonged to her. So, given anime's strong coincidences, they're probably one and the same. But the spellcaster advises Kenichi not to dig into the girl's past, especially since Anemone herself doesn't seem interested in knowing who her parents were. A little while later, as the group is walking home, Anemone suddenly feels an urge to use the grimoire. She gets down on the ground and starts casting a high protection spell. She's doing pretty well for her first time, but just as the protection wall comes together, it crumbles away entirely. Anemone then curls up in pain on the ground. Kenichi, thinks it's because of the failed spell. But nope, Anemone's just having her first period. A couple of hours and some painkillers later, she's back to her usual cheery self, talking about where babies come from. The next day, Kenichi notices a carriage approaching from the sea to his house. It opens to reveal Mallow, who wanted to pay his daughter a visit. He first congratulates her on her successful restaurant, but then gets down to business, explaining how to get rid of Thogalum. Mallow is happy to help, and Kenichi sets up a patio set. Of course, they both lose their minds getting ready to sell it. Once they've calmed down, Kenichi nervously asks for his daughter's hand in marriage, making Primula cry. Mallow laughs it off. To him, they're already married, seeing as Primula tracked Kenichi down and barged into his house. After a talk and a shared meal, Mallow opens a branch company in Astrantia. The next day, another carriage shows up on Kenichi's doorstep. This time, it turns out to be North Pole, Crouton, the guy who left his wife around Kenichi and he didn't smash, and a random beast man. Seeing Primula and Kenichi together, North Pole is crushed. He had proposed and the girl just vanished on him. Apparently, North Pole heard from Crouton that she was here, so he came running, only to find out she was already getting her back blown out. But seeing her partner wasn't some random but Kenichi, Bro accepts the heartbreak. He never had a chance. Meanwhile in town, the corrupt noble eventually learns that Mallow is opening up shop and knows this means they're challenging his monopoly. Later that day, Kenichi and the whole group pull up to the market alongside the Viscount and Eupatorium, who is currently trying to convince her husband to build a road to Kenichi's house directly. Damn, his wife is thirsty, and he doesn't even notice. Kenichi can't believe her shamelessness and reminds her they should be saving money, given their financial problems. Kenichi then walks over to one of the shops owned by the man. As it looks like he's about to buy fruit, he drops a giant spider corpse right in the middle of the store. The vendor shouts at him, asking if he's trying to start a fight, and Kenichi smiles because that's exactly what he's trying to do. Soon, all the commotion gets the gang's attention, and Thogalum comes out with several armed men to deal with it. Once Thogalum steps out, Kenichi introduces himself as a mage, explaining he didn't like the way Thogalum treated his wife. Hearing this, the merchant orders his men to attack Kenichi. However, his men are hesitant to fight Kenichi, and rightfully so, because the dude pulled out a giant spider corpse like it's nothing. But Kenichi has his entire squad with him. Thogalum realizes this is going to be a little more difficult than he initially thought, but he's still confident because his men outnumber Kenichi's force. But suddenly Vel shows up to fight, and all the beast folk recognize the bobcat. Not wanting to anger their god, they leave. He retreats into his compound, with Kenichi following after him. Inside, the dog people are ready to fight as they don't respect bobcats. With Vel growling at them, being the same people that shot an arrow at it, it becomes an all-out brawl, with North Pole reacting in time to defend Kenichi, and the girls using their superior speed to shoot arrows. The brother beast folk take down their enemies with superior swords. Kenichi, not wanting to be left out, summons his backhoe, using it to destroy much of the compound and the enemy. Thogalum, seeing that he's on the verge of losing, runs before he's cornered. Kenichi chases after him with the backhoe, but as the man runs, he thinks about his shop. Kenichi, not wanting to miss the opportunity, destroys the man's shop. The man begs for him to stop, but Kenichi ignores him. Just then, Mallow calls for him to stop, saying he can handle things from here, as the destruction of property is just wasteful. He plans to buy it and put a Mallow shop here. Seeing that Mallow is involved, Thogalum stomps over to him, but stops when he remembers he's cornered. Kenichi, in his defense for all of this, says that Thogalum's men were the first to draw their swords, and it just so happens that Kenichi was escorting the Viscount today, so an attack on him can be seen as an assassination attempt on the Viscount. Thogalum feels betrayed, given his past dealings with the Viscount, but the man leaves him with barely anything, telling him he can live, but must leave his land, with all his assets going back to the Viscount. Later, Thogalum puts his wife and children in a cart and prepares to leave, but before he does, he gives Mallow a message, feeling smug that the man doesn't know who was behind his daughter's disappearance. Just then, an urgent letter from the king calls for the summons of Kenichi the mage, immediately. Later, he talks it over with Primula and Mallow, with both telling him to meet this challenge, even in the face of death. The next day, Mary and her family move away. Speaking to Eupatorium and the Viscount, at worst, the Crown thinks they might be on the side of the anti-Crown faction and may start a rebellion. At the royal capital, the townspeople freak out as they've never seen a car before. Inside the gates, the group sees mages controlling stone golems, with Aine getting pumped up wanting to control some. But Primula tells her she needs a special permit for that. Inside, they find the roads rather complex, with them getting lost and needing to ask for directions. Apparently, there aren't any maps. The group shows the castle guards the letter he got from the king, and after about an hour, the guards return with the princess and her group. Kenichi and his group bow. The princess is amused but reminds them they called for the mage, not a merchant. Kenichi replies that he views himself as a merchant. One of the attendants demands to know how he got here so fast, as it's only been about 2 weeks since they sent the letter. Kenichi just says he used his iron summon to get here. This catches the princess's attention as she wants to view the beast. So Kenichi summons his car. It looks even more impressive than the princess thought. Her guards try to stop her from getting any closer, but in the end, she gets a ride around the castle. As she admires the ride, he warns her that it's not wise to get in the vehicle of a stranger, as he could run away with her. The princess finds the idea interesting, saying he can try if he wants. He's able to picture this princess causing trouble in the future. When she gets back, all her advisors and guards try scolding the girl for her reckless actions, but the girl just raises a hand, silencing them all. She knows these people don't care for her safety, but are only worried about losing their own heads, as they can just quit if they don't like her actions. With that, the princess allows Kenichi to call her Lilith. Anemone is annoyed by Lilith, and this only makes the girl more interested in his group. She allows him to have a reward and to state his wish, so she permits him to use a portion of the garden as a camping spot. Lilith finds the request strange, but allows it. After hearing his reasoning, she finds it fitting, as it's going to be several months until he has an audience with her father. Kenichi doesn't like the sound of this, but soon he's escorted into the castle and to his private section. Seeing that he has an audience, he says a magical chant and summons his house. Lilith gets excited and runs inside to check it out. Kenichi sees this girl just does whatever she wants. Then she decides she's going to stay here. The advisors scold her, but in the end, she gets what she wants, so Kenichi just summons more sheds and his bathtubs. Next, he summons his backhoe and gets ready to start digging, but all of a sudden Lilith climbs in with him and sits on his lap. She's heard a lot about this thing and wants to have a front row seat to see how it works. Kenichi sees no reason to refuse, so he uses the backhoe like he normally would. Once he's done, he carries the princess out of it, but as soon as she gets out, the princess's knight draws his sword and yells at Kenichi for daring to touch the princess so casually. He then lunges at him, and this guy is really trying to kill Kenichi, so Kenichi summons a police riot shield to block the attack. Like, if bro had such a problem with this, why didn't he put his foot down before and stop it? Kenichi then pulls out a crossbow to retaliate. The knight jumps back to avoid getting shot, but Anemone isn't going to let him get away with attacking Kenichi, so she launches a fireball at him. The royal mage steps in to block the fireball, so Anemone is prepared to fire another shot. But before this can escalate, Lilith tells them all to put down their weapons. Lilith is amazed by Anemone, as she can use magic at such a young age. She then formally introduces herself to Anemone and asks her what other spells she can use. Anemone tells her she can also use explosion magic, which is quite a big deal because if Anemone had used explosion magic, those two would have become ash on the ground. The knights feel humiliated, being bested by a child. Later that evening, Kenichi starts preparing dinner and the princess loves how good it smells, but she doesn't know what the white stuff on the plate is called. Kenichi explains that it's called rice, and if she's not comfortable eating it, he can get her some bread, but she says she'd be happy to have some rice. Once the food is ready, Kenichi serves Lilith some rice and curry, and she loves it. Kenichi once again believes that curry is justice, even for royalty. She asks if it's normal for commoners to eat such tasty food because she's never had anything like this before. But Kenichi tells her it's almost impossible for regular people to get their hands on spices because the Spice Syndicate keeps raising the prices. Lilith is aware of the Spice Syndicate as they've been a major annoyance for a long time. She asks Kenichi if he can tell her what spices were used to make the dish, but Kenichi has no idea. He tells her he wasn't the one who made it, but he can give her a can of the spices so she can try to recreate it later. The princess takes that as a challenge. In the meantime, she's taken a liking to the spoon and plate, willing to buy them. After a little discussion with Primula, he tells Lilith it'll cost her 40 gold for 1 plate and 1 spoon. She next has her top maid, Malin, have the chef try and recreate the spices used. While looking at the woman, it's one of the rare times Kenichi is so attracted he starts to visualize her in different outfits. His wife notices the look and isn't pleased, but the princess is ready to acknowledge him as a merchant, as he must have several dirty magazines in stock. But Kenichi smirks, as that's a trade secret. Anemone can't take it anymore and pushes Lilith away as she's too close. Later, the princess experiences taking a bath in a hot tub for the first time, plus the hairdryer, with Kenichi and the beast folk having to sleep outside. That night, both Naya and Miley suddenly get up because they sense something strange nearby. The next morning, the queen gets up from a bad dream. She then spots Kenichi. Kenichi is setting up breakfast. A few minutes later, Lilith gets up, still having bed hair. After a quick fix from the maids, she calls for Kenichi to exterminate rats nesting under the castle. Kenichi and the others look like they came back from the set of Breaking Bad, as they used rat poison to kill over 1,000 rats at once. On another day, Lilith organized an auction for the giant spider corpse in Kenichi's item box. On yet another day, she asked Kenichi to pretend to kidnap her to see if he could really get away with it. So Kenichi grabs her and scales the castle walls to prove that he could easily get away with Lilith if he wanted to. The next day, Lilith wanted to do something nice for Kenichi, so she presented him with the green curry her chefs made. It tastes great, so Kenichi compliments the chefs for being able to recreate the curry spices so well. All of a sudden, Lilith asks Kenichi if he has any food in his item box that her chefs wouldn't be able to recreate. This time he takes it as a challenge, so he pulls out a box of luxury chocolates. The princess tries a piece, and she is amazed by how sweet it is. She gives a piece to her head chef, Sambak, and asks if he would be able to recreate it. After tasting the chocolate, Sambak admits that he could never create something so perfect. The next day, Lilith goes out to see Kenichi as soon as she's done with her duties, asking for another box as her mother would like some. It turns out that Lilith isn't actually the blood daughter of the queen, so she tries to go out of her way to be nice to the woman. Lilith is the daughter of the king's concubine who passed away, but she's also the only child of the king, which is why she's fawned over so much. At dinner, Naya and Miley say they sense something again. All the maids also seem quite worried, so Lilith explains that there have been rumors about the castle being haunted. Countless people died protecting the royal family, and no doubt many of them held grudges before they passed. At this point, the maids are all terrified and ask Lilith to ask Kenichi to get rid of the ghosts. Lilith personally doesn't care about them, but since her maids are so bothered, she asks Kenichi to solve the problem. Kenichi doesn't see how he could do this, but agrees, on the condition that Naya and Miley are allowed to enter the castle, since they're the only ones who can sense the ghosts. After doing a bit of searching, Kenichi buys a sprayer and fills it with holy water, purified by a priest, mixed with Japanese sake and some salt, having the power of both the west and east. They walk through the halls, and Naya and Miley point at a corner, telling Kenichi they can sense something coming from over there. He sprays the area with holy water. After that, they move to the maids' changing quarters. Kenichi takes a sniff and admits it already smells heavenly, imagining the wonderful sight, but then Anemone gives him a dead fish look. Eventually, he gets to work and sprays all over the place. The maids feel better and no longer feel like something is staring at them. Kenichi wonders if it's just a placebo effect, but he's soon dragged all over the castle. Finishing with the queen's room, he wonders if he should be there. He sprays the room, with the queen having terrible nightmares in that place. Lastly, Vel looks at the vase, so he sprays it, but it's not enough. He asks if it's important, and Lilith doesn't think so, so she removes it. As a reward, he's allowed to read the royal magic book, but is forbidden from taking anything. Kenichi understands and reads a book on magic stone golems, but he soon gets a better idea and begins to copy every book he can. After 4 hours, they manage to copy around 35 books. As they leave, a maid with a serious expression waits at the door to make sure they didn't steal anything. She starts checking every shelf, and all the books are still there. Later, at the bottom of a staircase, Kenichi is called into a private room with the princess. Lilith noticed that women like Mylan are his type. Kenichi admits this is true, but questions why she asked. As a reward, she allows Kenichi to have her. Kenichi initially refuses because he is married to Primula. Lilith finds it surprising to meet a faithful noble. Still, Kenichi must question if Mylan is okay with this. To his shock, she is. Hearing this, Kenichi can't hold back. He pulls out a cosplay maid outfit. Eventually, the day for his appointment with the king came, and Kenichi and his group were instructed on where to go. The royal hall was filled with 100 nobles, all of whom looked down on Kenichi, not believing he's the mage they'd heard so much about, and also discriminating against beast folk being allowed in the palace. Sitting on the throne were Lilith, her mother, and her father. From the moment Kenichi takes a look at the queen's eyes, he's able to sense something strange about her. Kenichi and the others bow, but soon after introductions, the announcer calls for them to fight. This shocks Lilith, who questions her mother's motives. The capital's representative is a rising star, Lady Melissa Lana Nasturtium. Kenichi did wonder why so many nobles were brought here. The king wishes to put on a show. The nobles laugh, with even their opponent taking a moment to mock Kenichi. She agreed to come out of curiosity, excited to defeat the mage from the frontier, but instead is met with an old man who foolishly got his family involved. In the next moment, Melissa summons a dragon. In the next moment, Kenichi summons a giant excavator. Melissa is a little surprised, but isn't willing to acknowledge Kenichi, so she orders the dragon to attack. It spits out a fireball. Kenichi knows this won't be easy and moves out of the way. Behind him, he notices that the other mages make sure to put up barriers to shield the audience. Kenichi, seeing the destruction, wonders if all of this is okay, but soon the other nobles begin to mock him, calling it luck that he didn't die, as Melissa only missed. The beast women shoot arrows, but don't manage to do any damage. The fight doesn't look to be going Kenichi's way, as this wasn't enough to defeat the spider, this being a much tougher monster. Anemone, noticing how difficult a spot Kenichi is in, chants a magic spell, then fires her explosion magic, making a large explosion, but it doesn't seem to do enough damage. Soon the dragon fires a flame attack at them, and Anemone manages to stop it with a high protect spell. The attack is reflected, and it breaks a portion of the ceiling, with even Melissa having to admit it was impressive. But the queen silently continues to watch the match. Naya and Miley manage to shoot the dragon in the eyes, blinding it. Kenichi and the dragon clash again, and the two destroy much of the palace area, with the nobles running for cover. Anemone then chants another spell, the one Kenichi copied from the library, summoning a stone golem, crafting a golem core. The nobles twitch their opinions, as they can't believe a commoner's child is able to do such high-level magic, but it soon turns back to mockery, as it's only a golem's hand. Still, Anemone uses the hand to push the dragon into the stands, definitely hurting some people. Kenichi thinks this is enough, as he does a couple of high-speed spins and whacks it on the head repeatedly. Once they get out of the machine, Kenichi stores it in his item box, then announces that this contest was bullshit, as he didn't like how they were talking about his family. He plans to use all the tactics possible to ruin this awful country, as his family isn't some spectacle they can have fight for their amusement. Kenichi then realizes what he said in anger and goes to apologize to Primula. But she and the others agree with whatever decision he makes. Lilith then walks down to speak with them, as she agrees that just because they're royals doesn't mean they can treat people like jesters and have them perform for them. But she questions if he's making the right choice, as going against the nobles can have the opposite effect on achieving the peaceful life he seeks. Even nobles would come after him in retaliation, so Lilith is willing to offer him a way out, being to marry her. Kenichi doesn't hesitate to decline. Lilith's confidence is shattered, as she can't believe he didn't even think about it. Kenichi doesn't want to be a noble's plaything, so he refuses. Lilith manages to get a birthday present out of him in exchange for letting this whole incident be written off. With the help of Primula, Kenichi offers the princess a pearl necklace. Lilith can't believe he was able to craft a necklace that had exact jewels to them, and after showing her father her new gift, pissing off the queen, Lilith manages to get official sanction for all his activities. But this is exactly what the queen wanted, with Kenichi finding her scarier than the dragon. She glares at Kenichi, asking if he didn't have a gift for her. Kenichi reminds her that this was a gift for the princess's birthday. The queen remarks that her birthday is also coming up. Not believing the audacity of this woman, he nervously gets her own set of double pearl necklaces. People seeing the gift announce that such a luxury would ruin a kingdom's finances. The queen agrees, and since such a gift can't be given for free, she gives him a key as a reward. Kenichi asks what the key is for, and the queen says, to her bedroom. This makes Kenichi question the world he was sent to, as it seems like Isekai NTR Mo by the day, making him question the nobles as they just offer their bodies to anyone. Not to mention, doing this in front of the king is insane. But when he looks at the man, instead of being pissed, he just looks away. Lilith tells her mother not to joke like this, and Kenichi uses this as an exit, believing Lilith is correct. Seeing how he calls Lilith by her name makes the queen wish for equality in this area as well, allowing Kenichi to call her by her first name, Amara. Kenichi then asks to exchange the key for some old furniture the royal family has. In the end, the queen allows it, worth nearly 1.5 billion. While Kenichi is thinking about what to buy with all his money, The queen calls him over to take a desk she's had since she was a little girl, as it brings back bad memories of the past. Meaning, we get a flashback. The queen makes another pass at Kenichi, but he doesn't bite. Soon they pass by the flower vase, and the queen admits it's the cause for her bad sleep. As she had the noble who gifted it to her interrogated, he admitted the vase was cursed, so she thanks Kenichi. The curse was meant to kill her, but during the battle between Kenichi and the lower dragon, that same noble ended up dead. Kenichi has a bad feeling that she planned for nobles that were against her to die in the crowd. As they walk, the queen tells him about the anti-noble faction. Viscount Thunbergia is a low-ranking member who tried to gain more power with the help of the merchant Thogalum, but in the end, Kenichi ran them out of town. They had even tried to add Dahlia under their territory. In the queen's eyes, Kenichi was the biggest help in removing those threats. Even the incident with Shaga aided her. Kenichi is now officially afraid of her. Later, the mage Melissa comes by to visit Anemone, curious how she was able to learn magic. Anemone just tells her she read grimoires. Taking a look at the girl's book, Melissa is able to read a text from the girl's mother, confirming that the mother has been helping her up until this point. Later, Kenichi is granted extra land, Astilby Lakefront, being the body of water Kenichi is known to live at, with him now being an official baron. He's able to go home some days later, but since Lilith is tagging along, her personal maid Malin is coming, and not to fulfill Kenichi's maid fantasies. The girl borderline pesters her father to let her go. He couldn't help but feel the maid's hot gaze on him as he kept getting flashbacks of their passionate study session. The series ends with us getting a glimpse of the mage with mayonnaise magic.